What I'm about to reveal will shatter everything you thought you knew about 3I Atlas and the dark truths unfolding within our solar system right now. While the world's scientific elite debates its classification, a mere comet or something far more profound, a torrent of leaked documents and classified observations paints a chillingly different picture, one that global governments are desperate to keep from public scrutiny. Days ago, a monstrous coronal mass ejection, a solar storm of unimaginable ferocity slammed into 3I Atlas. What transpired next defies every known law of physics, ripping apart our fundamental understanding of matter and energy. Instead of disintegrating into cosmic dust or being violently deflected, this enigmatic object absorbed the energy equivalent of 1 trillion atomic bombs. It didn't just survive, it converted this raw cataclysmic power into highly structured signals, precisely beamed directly at Earth. The astronomical 40-fold increase in brightness wasn't a random celestial flicker. No, it was a controlled, deliberate, and utterly impossible feat for any natural phenomenon, but that was merely the prelude. Groundbreaking new calculations, synthesized from trajectory data meticulously gathered by 227 observatories across the globe, reveal a truth that borders on the impossible. 3I Atlas weighs an astonishing 33 billion tons. This renders it denser than even neutron star material, a cosmic anomaly that should instantly collapse under its own gravity. Yet somehow, it remains intact, masking its colossal gravitational signature, moving with an impossible grace. The cold, unyielding language of mathematics doesn't lie, but it's telling us a story that challenges every axiom of physics, every limit of technology we ever conceived. What they are not telling you is the true cost of this revelation. The 20 scientists who courageously went public were just the visible tip of a vast submerged iceberg. Dozens more researchers, their brilliance a threat to the established narrative, have been systematically pressured into silence. Their critical funding vanished overnight, their burgeoning careers ruthlessly destroyed, simply for daring to ask the wrong questions. Simultaneously, deep space tracking networks, originally engineered for classified military surveillance, have detected structured, non-random emissions emanating from 3I Atlas. These signals match no known natural phenomenon, hinting at an intelligence beyond human comprehension. The window for whatever 3I Atlas is meticulously orchestrating is closing, not in months or years, but in mere weeks. This looming December deadline isn't based on speculative conjecture. It is the inescapable conclusion derived from sophisticated orbital mechanics, refined by the most advanced mission planning computations ever documented. Whether this impending encounter represents humanity's long-awaited first contact, or a prelude to something far more ominous, the accumulated evidence inexorably suggests one terrifying truth. Humanity has never been alone in the universe. Prepare yourselves. If you're fascinated by these revelations, make sure to hit subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think 3I Atlas is a sign of first contact? Or something darker? Let's discuss. Chapter 1. The 20 Scientists Bombshell. On September 19th, 2025, a seismic event didn't just rattle the academic world, it cracked the foundational consensus of astrophysics. A research paper, uploaded quietly to a preprint server, carried a deceptively bland title, but its implications were anything but. Authored by 20 eminent scientists spanning institutions across 3 continents, its conclusions were so explosive that within hours, a furious cascade of threats, funding withdrawals and professional ostracization began. The entire scientific establishment, a monolithic structure built on cautious empiricism, scrambled desperately to contain what they perceived as an act of dangerous academic rebellion. The paper's title, Statistical Analysis of Trajectory Anomalies in Interstellar Object 3I Atlas, was a masterclass in academic understatement. Yet, nestled within its dense mathematical formulations was a terrifying assertion that would soon dominate every space agency's crisis meeting. These 20 trailblazing researchers had irrevocably staked their entire professional reputations on a single, chilling declaration. Under no conceivable natural explanation, the data showed was 3I Atlas behaving like any natural object should. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a luminary in planetary dynamics at the European Southern Observatory, stood as the lead author. Her credentials were unimpeachable, and her methodology was beyond scientific reproach. Yet, her conclusion was an existential torpedo aimed directly at conventional astrophysical wisdom. In private communications later leaked to the public, she confided to a trusted colleague, "The trajectory data is keeping me awake at night. We're looking at precision navigation that would make our best spacecraft engineers green with envy. This isn't random, this isn't natural, and we need to start having very uncomfortable conversations about what that means for humanity." The paper's central argument was an impenetrable fortress of statistical analysis, so rigorous, so ironclad, that even the most hardened skeptics found themselves struggling to locate a single mathematical flaw. When 3I Atlas was first detected, hurtling through the vacuum, it was initially dismissed as just another cosmic vagabond, ejected from a distant star system. However, as a growing constellation of observatories meticulously tracked its serpentine movement, a disquieting pattern began to materialize, one that defied any rational explanation based on known physics. The object wasn't merely a passive tourist passing through our solar system. It was approaching 3 of our major planets, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, with what the researchers, in their stark, understated academic language, called impossible precision. The statistical probability of such deliberate synchronized alignments occurring by sheer random chance was calculated to be less than 0.05%. Dr. James Chen, an astronomics expert from MIT, whose crucial calculations underpin the devastating analysis, struggled to find any earthly analogy for the celestial ballet they were observing. "Imagine standing in New York and throwing a dart that hits a bullseye in London," he was recorded saying. "Then imagine that same dart somehow ricochets with perfect, uncanny precision to hit bullseyes in Paris and Rome. That's essentially what we're seeing with 3I Atlas, except the distances involved are measured in hundreds of millions of kilometers." The sheer mathematical precision was what made the paper so utterly devastating. This wasn't subjective interpretation. The trajectory data was concrete, incontrovertible, and accessible to any institution with the requisite computational resources. Each planetary approach was timed with the breathtaking accuracy of a celestial clockwork mechanism. Mars would receive an intimate inspection, approaching to within 0.6 astronomical units on October 3rd. But it wasn't merely the precision that troubled the researchers, it was the chilling efficiency. If 3I Atlas had been engineered by human hands to survey the solar system's major bodies, not even our most brilliant mission planners could have plotted a more elegant, energy-optimized course. The object's trajectory allowed it to gather a maximal trove of data about each planet, while expending a minimal, almost negligible amount of energy on course corrections. Dr. Maria Santos, a mission planning specialist, reviewed the calculations and found herself confronting possibilities that fundamentally challenged her worldview. "We spend years planning trajectories for our own spacecraft to achieve much simpler objectives," she confided. "What we're witnessing here represents a level of mission planning that suggests either incredible, statistically impossible luck, or, far more unsettlingly, intentional design by an intelligence beyond our current comprehension." The paper meticulously documented how 3I Atlas was following a path that exquisitely maximized scientific return, while simultaneously minimizing the risk of detection, all the hallmarks of intelligent mission planning. Perhaps the most profoundly disturbing aspect was the object's approach vector. Unlike the chaotic random entry paths of typical interstellar visitors, 3I Atlas had arrived from the precise direction of Sagittarius, directly towards the galactic center. This strategic approach vector, deep within the crowding of background stars, would have rendered early detection by human instruments nearly impossible. It was as if the object had been deliberately, cunningly concealed until the last possible moment, a cosmic ghost materializing silently in our galactic backyard. Furthermore, the timing of its discovery was equally suspicious. 3I Atlas was only detected once it had reached the orbit of Jupiter, granting humanity a mere few months to observe, analyze, and comprehend its nature before it was destined to disappear behind the blinding glare of the sun. A longer observation period would undoubtedly have permitted more detailed, intrusive study, potentially exposing secrets that its architects might prefer to keep hidden. "Natural objects do not optimize their paths," Dr. Kim emphatically explained. "They simply follow the immutable laws of physics. They do not demonstrate strategic thinking, purpose, or foresight. The academic response was both swift and brutally orchestrated. Within a mere 24 hours of publication, a coordinated chorus of senior astronomers issued official statements. They questioned not only the methodology but, most damningly, the professional competence of the 20 intrepid authors. Yet, the institutional response, rather than alleviating concerns, revealed a critical omission. Critics strategically focused on attacking the credibility of unconventional conclusions, while the trajectory data itself, the very bedrock of the paper's findings, remained conspicuously unaddressed. The establishment chose silence, hoping to suppress the terrifying questions. The 20 scientists, however, had anticipated this. They collectively agreed that the implications of their findings were simply too monumental to be suppressed for mere career considerations. Their publication triggered responses that rippled far beyond the cloistered academic community. It was downloaded over 50,000 times. Energized by the unprecedented revelations, amateur astronomers across the globe, utilizing freely available orbital data, embarked on their own independent trajectory analysis projects. Remarkably, multiple independent analyses consistently confirmed the mathematical conclusions. This radical democratization of scientific analysis created an unforeseen problem for authorities desperately attempting to control the narrative. The 3I Atlas data was publicly available. Anyone with sufficient mathematical background could independently confirm that the object's path was indeed statistically anomalous to a degree that defied natural explanation. The paper had achieved something that decades of SETI research had failed to accomplish. It had irrevocably moved the possibility of alien contact from the realm of theoretical speculation into the unassailable domain of peer-reviewed scientific analysis. The cold, hard mathematical precision of the trajectory analysis made it utterly impossible to dismiss the conclusions as mere speculation. As September bled into October, 3I Atlas continued its relentless silent approach, seemingly oblivious to the seismic chaos it was sowing on Earth. The object had transcended being a mere astronomical curiosity. It had, irrevocably, become a profound test of humanity's collective willingness to confront possibilities that challenge the most fundamental assumptions about their unique place in the universe. The bombshell had been dropped. The chilling existential question now hung heavy in the cosmic air. Was humanity truly prepared to deal with the earth-shattering implications? Chapter 2. Loeb's mothership theory goes viral. As the revered Frank B. Baird Jr., professor of science at Harvard, Avi Loeb had earned the right to speculate. But what he published on his personal Medium blog on August 5, 2025, was nothing short of a scientific gauntlet thrown at cautious orthodoxy. Loeb began with his characteristic blend of rigorous mathematics and accessible prose, outlining 3I Atlas's prodigious size, speed, and unnervingly precise trajectory. Then came the paragraph that detonated a global media firestorm. The more likely scenario, from an engineering perspective, Loeb wrote, involves a mothership that releases many probes which perform a reverse Oort maneuver to slow down at perihelion and intercept Earth, taking advantage of the Sun's gravitational assist. Loeb, ever the provocateur, proceeded to describe in chilling detail how such a deployment might function. His calculations demonstrated that diminutive cosmic specks, probes, could reach Earth within months of their silent release from the colossal main body. The covert deployment, according to his meticulously constructed models, would occur when 3I Atlas reached its closest approach to the Sun, its perihelion, a critical moment when the object would be completely hidden from Earth-based observation, obscured behind our star's blinding disk. The calculated arrival window for any such released probes would be a narrow, agonizing fortnight, between November 21st and December 5th, 2025. The implications were staggering. If Loeb was correct, humanity wasn't idly observing a lone alien visitor. They were watching the crucial deployment phase of what could be an interstellar reconnaissance mission of unparalleled sophistication. Within 6 hours of publication, Loeb's post had been viewed over 800,000 times, swelling to over 2 million by the day's end. This timing was catastrophic for NASA, which was struggling to maintain the narrative that 3I Atlas was merely an unusual but ultimately natural comet. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA's director of astrobiology and a respected colleague, was thrust into the impossible position of having to publicly respond. Professor Loeb's speculation, she stated, her voice strained, goes far beyond what the available evidence can support. These particular ideas represent conjecture rather than rigorous scientific analysis. But Mitchell's measured response was instantly drowned out by the ensuing tsunami of public reaction. The hashtag #DerSocialMonde alien mothership began trending globally. Survival gear retailers reported massive spikes in sales of emergency food and off-grid communication equipment. Spontaneous protests erupted in major cities, demanding government transparency about the mysterious object. The scientific community found itself deeply, bitterly divided. Yet, Loeb's core concept of a reverse Oort maneuver was firmly grounded in established orbital mechanics. Dr. James Harrison, a veteran propulsion specialist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, was reluctantly compelled to confirm the theoretical soundness of Loeb's scenario. In a meticulously peer-reviewed paper, Harrison conclusively demonstrated that the maneuver was not only theoretically possible, but strikingly optimal for the kind of stealth deployment mission Loeb had described. This approach would maximize efficiency while simultaneously minimizing detection risk, Harrison wrote, providing an irrefutable implicit endorsement. The academic credibility of Harrison's analysis made it impossible for authorities to dismiss the mothership theory as pure fantasy. Meanwhile, amateur radio operators around the world began reporting unusual, intermittent signals that seemed to correlate with Loeb's precise deployment timeline. Seasoned ham radio operators claimed the signals were organized, almost like they were carrying information. Analysis revealed recurring mathematical patterns, consistent with how human scientists might attempt to unambiguously demonstrate intelligence. Government agencies, overwhelmed and underprepared, confronted an information management crisis. Officially acknowledging the amateur reports would lend critical credibility to the terrifying idea that 3i Atlas was actively communicating. Their solution was strategic silence, which only fueled more frenzied conspiracy theories. The international response laid bare the deep-seated concerns of governments worldwide. Russia's space research head forthrightly suggested that international cooperation on 3i Atlas monitoring should be expanded immediately, stating, "Our very survival may depend on it." China's National Space Administration, typically a bastion of secrecy, began unprecedented sharing of detailed tracking data with international partners. The most existentially unsettling finding came from Loeb's analysis of the stealth deployment advantage. According to his calculations, any probes released by 3i Atlas during its clandestine solar approach would be virtually undetectable until they chose to reveal themselves. The combination of overwhelming solar interference and the probe's diminutive size would render tracking them an impossible feat. By the time they became detectable, they would already be wherever their mission required them to be, already embedded, unseen, unheard, Loeb chillingly wrote in a follow-up post. The possibility of advanced alien surveillance, operating completely undetected in Earth's immediate vicinity, represented a fundamental, terrifying shift in humanity's understanding of its vulnerability. The mothership theory had, irrevocably, fundamentally changed the entire conversation. With Loeb's mathematically calculated deployment window rapidly approaching, the stakes for all of humanity were escalating, minute by terrifying minute. Chapter 3. Anomaly Alert: The Growing Feature Mystery. Dr. Michael Zhang, a seasoned astronomer conducting routine photometric observations at the European Southern Observatory, froze. It was September 27th, 2025, just past 2 hwams in the morning local time, when his instruments registered readings so anomalous, so utterly impossible, that they made him question his own equipment calibration, his own sanity. The Atlas was growing. This wasn't the predictable, gradual expansion astronomers expected from comets. As they drew closer to the Sun, developing ethereal, elongated tails and larger, more diffuse comas from sublimating ice. No, Zhang's meticulous measurements indicated that the object's solid nucleus itself appeared to be physically expanding, actively developing entirely new, geometrically organized structural features that had demonstrably not existed in previous observations. Zhang, gripped by a cold scientific dread, spent the next 4 grueling hours rechecking his data, convinced, desperate to believe, he had made some fundamental catastrophic error in his analysis. He rigorously reviewed his calibration procedures, meticulously examined his sophisticated equipment for even the slightest malfunction, and even reanalyzed months of archived observations to ensure he hadn't missed something blindingly obvious. But every single test, every single cross-verification, confirmed the same impossible, terrifying conclusion. 3I Atlas was actively, demonstrably changing its physical structure in real time. The first thing any scientist does when they see anomalous data is assume they've made a mistake, Zhang later explained, his voice still tinged with disbelief, during the emergency press conference that ESO, caught flat-footed, hastily organised. I checked everything twice, then checked it again. I brought in colleagues to verify my methodology, but the evidence was undeniable. This object is transforming in ways that challenge our fundamental understanding of how celestial bodies behave. It is an active, evolving entity. Zhang's earth-shattering discovery triggered an immediate, unprecedented mobilization of telescopes across the world. Every major observatory with the capability to track 3I Atlas was pressed into emergency, round-the-clock service, creating an ad hoc but immensely powerful international monitoring network. The torrent of data that poured in over the following 72 hours painted a picture that no astronomical textbook, no scientific treatise, had remotely prepared scientists to interpret. High-resolution imaging, painstakingly captured by the venerable Hubble Space Telescope, revealed what appeared to be unmistakable geometric structures emerging with unsettling precision from the object's surface. These were not the random, chaotic formations typically observed in cometary outgassing, or the haphazard shedding of space debris. No, these were organized, eerily symmetrical, and appeared to be growing in coordinated patterns that screamed purposeful construction rather than natural evolutionary processes. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the imaging specialist at the Space Telescope Science Institute, who had initially, publicly, been deeply skeptical of all alien theories, found herself staring, mesmerized, at data that challenged every single truth she thought she knew about objects in space. After 18 straight, grueling hours analysing the unparalleled Hubble observations, she was finally willing to go on record, her findings poised to shake the astronomical community to its very core. We are observing the emergence of structures that show clear, undeniable signs of geometric organisation, she stated, during a hastily arranged live-streamed press briefing that attracted over 5 million horrified viewers. These formations display symmetry, coordination and growth patterns that are simply not consistent with any known natural process. The structures appeared to be extruding from specific, precisely defined points on 3I Atlas's surface, growing outward in configurations that bore an unsettling resemblance to advanced antennae or sophisticated sensory arrays. Spectroscopic analysis, conducted under intense pressure, revealed that these emerging structures were composed of materials fundamentally different from the main body, displaying absorption lines consistent with complex metallic compounds, rather than the prosaic ice and rock mixture expected from a comet. What made these observations even more profoundly disturbing was the sheer speed of the changes. Time-lapse photography, an unforgiving witness, showed the structures extending, articulating, and repositioning themselves in what appeared to be real time, with movements occurring far too rapidly to be explained by thermal expansion, gravitational forces, or any other natural mechanism that baffled scientists could identify. Amateur astronomers, those unsung heroes with their surprisingly sophisticated home equipment, began reporting their own independent observations of the growing structures, providing crucial independent confirmation that the phenomenon wasn't limited to a few elite professional observatories. Carlos Mendez, whose home observatory in Chile, with its advanced optics, rivaled many institutional facilities, captured stunning video footage that would be viewed over 15 million times in its first week online, a testament to the global hunger for truth. "I've been imaging deep space objects for 20 years, Mendez passionately explained in his now famous YouTube commentary that accompanied the hypnotic time-lapse footage. "I understand equipment limitations, atmospheric distortion, and imaging artifacts. What we're seeing here is none of those things. We're watching something actively reconfigure itself in real time, and it's happening at a scale and speed that defies any natural explanation, any known physics." The footage showed 3I Atlas over a mere 12-hour observation period, with clear, undeniable evidence of new structures not only growing, but apparently moving and repositioning themselves with deliberate intent. The implications were staggering, existentially shattering. If these chilling observations were accurate, humanity was not merely observing a passive celestial body. They were witnessing advanced technology in active operation, a profound, undeniable declaration of intelligence, rather than the random dance of natural phenomena. The scientific community, a bastion of rational inquiry, erupted into controlled chaos. Researchers struggled, often visibly, to process observations that directly contradicted decades of established astrophysical understanding. Emergency meetings were frantically convened at NASA headquarters, the European Space Agency, and major universities across the world. Peer review processes, which normally demanded months of meticulous scrutiny, were compressed into a mere few frantic days as scientists desperately rushed to publish their analyses of the rapidly evolving, profoundly unsettling situation. But perhaps most troubling, most existentially disquieting, were the reports emanating from the colossal radio telescopes that had been diligently monitoring 3I Atlas for any hint of electromagnetic emissions. The signals that had previously been weak, sporadic, and intermittent suddenly became strong, persistent, almost insistent, with transmission bursts that correlated exactly with the emergence of each new physical structure. Dr. Frank Wilson, the distinguished director of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, found himself in the unprecedented, unenviable position of publicly acknowledging observations that challenged his lifelong, unwavering commitment to conventional scientific explanations. "We are detecting structured electromagnetic emissions that correlate directly with visual observations of physical changes in the object," he admitted, his voice barely concealing a tremor during a congressional briefing that was later, inevitably, leaked to multiple news outlets, sparking a fresh wave of public panic. The probability that this correlation is purely coincidental approaches mathematical impossibility. The signals, undeniably, weren't random electromagnetic noise, the cosmic static that characterizes most celestial phenomena, nor were they the simple, repeating mathematical patterns that scientists had long, optimistically speculated might represent rudimentary first contact scenarios. No, these were complex, multi-layered transmissions that appeared to carry vast quantities of information, encoded in sophisticated, unknown protocols that human technology, for all its advancements, couldn't even begin to decipher. Dr. Alan Foster, the esteemed director of the SETI Institute, who had dedicated his entire career, his very life, to searching for precisely this type of signal, found himself in the surreal, almost dreamlike position of announcing that humanity had potentially received its first confirmed unambiguous extraterrestrial communication. The signal structure demonstrates mathematical precision, information density, and encoding sophistication that unequivocally indicates advanced technological intelligence, he stated, his voice resonating with a mixture of awe and trepidation during a press conference that was simultaneously broadcast on every major news network worldwide, paralyzing global audiences. We appear to be witnessing information transfer on a scale and level of sophistication that strongly suggests a non-terrestrial origin, an intelligence far beyond our own. The actual content of these transmissions remained frustratingly encrypted, stubbornly resistant to every decoding methodology that Earth's most advanced computer systems could deploy. Cryptographic experts from the National Security Agency, Britain's Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ, and equivalent clandestine organisations around the world were quietly, secretly assigned to what rapidly became the highest priority code-breaking effort since the desperate days when Allied forces worked tirelessly to crack the infamous Enigma cipher during World War II. The results of this top-secret effort were both fascinatingly complex and existentially terrifying. The signals, bafflingly, appeared to be encrypted using mathematical principles that human cryptography had not yet, to its profound disadvantage, discovered or even conceptually implemented. Some astute analysts ventured the chilling suggestion that the encryption methodology itself might constitute part of the intended message, a cosmic flex, demonstrating the sender's overwhelming technological capabilities rather than merely attempting to conceal specific information content. But perhaps most disturbing, most strategically concerning, was the undeniable discovery that the transmissions weren't being broadcast randomly into the vast indifferent void of space. Meticulous analysis of the signal propagation patterns revealed, with chilling clarity, that they were being deliberately, precisely beamed toward Earth, with some transmission components appearing to target specific geographic regions, including major global population centers and critical technological infrastructure. Dr. Maria Santos, a communication theory specialist at the University of California, Berkeley, published an analysis that sent shockwaves not just through the scientific community, but deep into the cloistered intelligence agencies worldwide. Her groundbreaking research suggested that 3i Atlas wasn't merely attempting to communicate with humanity. No, it appeared to be conducting a systematic, meticulous technological survey of human civilization, a cosmic inventory. The transmission patterns correlate strongly with global population density, electromagnetic signatures from major urban centers, and the geographic locations of our most advanced scientific installations, Santos wrote in a peer-reviewed but heavily redacted report that whispered of dark truths. This appears to represent systematic reconnaissance and data gathering, rather than a naive, peaceful attempt at communication. The implications were profound, terrifying, and immediate. If Santos's analysis was accurate, humanity wasn't simply observing alien technology in their solar system. They were being systematically catalogued, assessed, and perhaps even profiled by an intelligence that had deliberately sought them out across the unimaginable distances of interstellar space. Government responses around the world shifted dramatically, with a chilling, almost audible thud, from cautious scientific curiosity to urgent, existential national security concerns. Military installations, once symbols of terrestrial power, were placed on an unprecedented heightened alert status. Critical infrastructure systems, the fragile arteries of modern society, were hardened against potential electromagnetic interference, against unseen threats. Emergency protocols, once relegated to theoretical exercises and dusty classified planning documents, were quietly, urgently activated. The public response was equally dramatic, far more visible and uncontrollably fervent. Chapter 4, CME Collision First Contact or Cosmic Accident. The CME collision and the subsequent highly publicized signal transmissions had been observed by a global network of amateur astronomers and radio operators, making it utterly impossible for authorities to control the information flow or manage public perception of the earth-shattering events. Social media platforms, groaning under the unprecedented strain, experienced unimaginable traffic loads as billions of people shared real-time updates, frantic technical analyses, and increasingly panicked speculation about alien intentions. The hashtag #SEMCollision accumulated over 50 million posts within the first 48 hours alone. Video platforms crashed repeatedly under the sheer volume of people uploading their own observations and increasingly frantic commentary. Online communities dedicated to tracking 3i Atlas exploded in membership, transforming from thousands of dedicated enthusiasts to millions within mere days of the collision. Every fragment of new data was immediately dissected, microscopically analysed, and fiercely debated by vast, crowdsourced legions of citizen scientists who often matched or even exceeded the analytical speed and acuity of official scientific institutions. Marcus Rodriguez, the amateur astronomer from Arizona whose early keen observations had initially garnered widespread attention, found himself accidentally coordinating a nascent global information network that now included professional researchers, bewildered military personnel, and ordinary citizens, all united by their desperate determination to understand what, precisely, was happening to their world. "We're not just passive observers anymore," Rodriguez explained, his voice crackling with a new sense of purpose in a video broadcast that attracted over 8 million viewers. "We're active participants in the most critical investigation in human history, and we cannot rely exclusively on official channels to provide us with the complete truth about what's occurring." The radical democratization of 3i Atlas research created unprecedented, profound challenges for authorities who are historically accustomed to controlling information flows during sensitive, nationally significant situations. Every major development was documented and shared by multiple independent sources, often before official statements could even be prepared and cautiously released. government agencies, once the sole arbiters of truth, found themselves reacting to public discoveries rather than leading the scientific investigation, a humbling, infuriating reversal of roles. Religious communities worldwide struggle to process the seismic theological implications of confirmed alien intelligence, actively, demonstrably investigating human civilization. The CME absorption event had provided undeniable, unambiguous evidence that 3I Atlas possessed technological capabilities far exceeding anything in human experience, forcing even the most hardened skeptics to acknowledge they were confronting something unprecedented, something that defied easy categorization. Pope Francis, ever the diplomat, issued a carefully crafted statement calling for calm reflection and emphasizing that divine creation encompasses infinite possibilities beyond human understanding. Other religious leaders found themselves desperately grappling with doctrinal questions that had never been seriously considered, questions that threatened to unravel centuries of theological scholarship. The energy management capabilities so spectacularly demonstrated during the CME collision raised deeply disturbing questions about the object's potential military applications. If 3I Atlas could systematically harvest and redirect the raw, untamed energy of a coronal mass ejection, what other, more terrifying forms of energy manipulation might it be capable of performing? Military strategists worldwide, their faces grim, began modelling apocalyptic scenarios involving technology that could weaponize stellar phenomena, transforming solar flares into precision-guided destructive forces, or manipulate electromagnetic fields on planetary scales, rendering all global communication instantly obsolete. The implications for national defense were staggering, rendering traditional military capabilities potentially obsolete, utterly meaningless, in the face of such advanced, seemingly godlike technological capabilities. Dr. Eliza Park, the brilliant MIT systems engineer who'd been meticulously analysing 3I Atlas's structural developments, published a supplementary report focusing specifically on the energy management systems so dramatically revealed during the CME encounter. Her incisive analysis suggested that the object had demonstrated capabilities that violated several assumed fundamental limitations of engineering physics. The selective energy absorption, real-time electromagnetic field manipulation, and coordinated system response indicate technological capabilities that approach what we might consider fundamental physical limits. Park wrote in language that read more like a chilling threat assessment than an academic paper. These capabilities suggest engineering principles and energy manipulation technologies that exceed our current understanding by potentially centuries, by millennia. The international scientific community found itself struggling, almost comically, to maintain traditional peer review processes in the face of rapidly evolving, existentially critical developments that seem to outpace conventional academic publishing timelines. Emergency protocols were hastily established for sharing critical, time-sensitive data, but the sheer volume and monumental significance of new observations strained collaborative frameworks that had been designed for much more routine, predictable research scenarios. Space agencies around the world quietly, urgently began repositioning satellites and deep space monitoring equipment, burning precious fuel reserves to maximize observation capabilities for 3I Atlas's continued enigmatic approach. The object's undeniable demonstration of active technological capabilities had, irrevocably, transformed it from a mere scientific curiosity into a potential, profoundly unpredictable threat that demanded continuous, unwavering monitoring. The CME collision had also revealed something else, a subtle but deeply troubling anomaly that gnawed at analysts meticulously studying the event data. The energy absorption process appeared to have enhanced 3I Atlas's technological capabilities rather than simply providing power for existing systems. New structural formations visible to the keenest instruments had emerged during and immediately after the collision, strongly suggesting that the object was actively using harvested stellar energy to expand its operational capacity to evolve. Amateur radio operators, their dedicated networks buzzing, reported detecting entirely new categories of signals following the CME encounter, transmission types that hadn't existed in their meticulous monitoring data prior to the collision. The signals strongly suggested that 3I Atlas had activated additional systems or capabilities that had previously remained dormant, awaiting the perfect energy surge. The timing of the collision itself raised additional deeply unsettling questions that made some observers profoundly uncomfortable. The CME that struck 3I Atlas had been a relatively routine solar event, a predictable cosmic burp. But the object's sophisticated anticipatory response strongly suggested that it had been prepared for exactly such an encounter. The systematic, almost premeditated nature of the energy harvesting process implied advanced knowledge of solar weather patterns and deliberate strategic positioning to intercept the coronal mass ejection. If 3I Atlas had intentionally positioned itself to encounter the CME, the implications were staggering, existential. It would suggest that the alien intelligence possessed detailed, predictive knowledge of solar behavior and had meticulously planned its approach to strategically take advantage of stellar energy sources for its own advanced technological requirements. The collision event had fundamentally altered the entire conversation about 3I Atlas, shifting it from mere speculation about its abstract nature to urgent, desperate questions about its intentions and its overwhelming capabilities. The object had unequivocally demonstrated technological sophistication that exceeded human engineering by unknown, terrifying margins, and it was actively using that technology to investigate human civilization with a dispassionate scientific precision that chilled observers to the bone. As September bled into October, and 3 Atlas continued its relentless, silent approach toward the inner solar system, now clearly revealed as something far more complex, far more powerful, and potentially far more dangerous than anyone had initially, naively imagined. The CME collision had stripped away any lingering possibility that the object was natural in origin, leaving humanity to confront the stark, terrifying reality that they were being visited and meticulously studied by an intelligence whose capabilities and intentions remained completely, terrifyingly unknown. Chapter 5. Impossible Mass, the 33 billion-ton nightmare. Dr. Richard Chloe, a veteran South African astronomer, had endured 3 sleepless nights, his mind reeling from calculations that should have been routine, but were instead yielding results that tore at the very fabric of astronomical understanding. Collaborating with the audacious Avi Loeb and the meticulous Peter Vez, Chloe had been painstakingly analysing 4 months of positional data for 3I Atlas. What they uncovered would force the entire scientific community, kicking and screaming, to confront an impossible, mind-bending reality. The object wasn't merely deviating from a standard trajectory, it wasn't even about the impossible precision that had already unsettled researchers. This was about fundamental physics. When any object traverses the vastness of space, it responds, however subtly, to the inexorable pull of gravitational forces, the subtle push of solar radiation pressure, and any outgassing from its own surface. These forces, though tiny, induce measurable changes in trajectory, allowing astronomers to precisely calculate an object's mass, its composition, and its elusive internal structure. But 3 Atlas was behaving as if it were utterly immune to these fundamental forces, moving with an eerie, ghost-like autonomy. We meticulously analysed 4,022 individual position measurements from 227 observatories worldwide, Chloe explained, his voice flat with disbelief, during the press conference that would forever be remembered as the moment the 3I Atlas mystery transcended science and became undeniably supernatural. The data spans 4.5 months of continuous observation, providing unprecedented precision in tracking this object's movement. The ensuing analysis revealed something that utterly violated fundamental assumptions about how objects behave in the vacuum of space. Despite clear, irrefutable evidence of massive outgassing, the kind of significant material ejection that should create potent rocket-like propulsive forces, 3I Atlas exhibited no measurable deviation from a pure, undisturbed gravitational trajectory. The upper limit of any non-gravitational acceleration was so infinitesimally small it was lost within the measurement error of the instruments themselves. This created an impossible equation, a paradox of cosmic proportions. The cutting-edge Webb Space Telescope had precisely measured the object, losing 150 kilograms of material every single second, ejected at velocities of 440 meters per second. According to Newton's immutable laws of motion, this prodigious mass loss should have been pushing 3I Atlas off course by amounts that would be easily, glaringly detectable. But the object continued moving serenely, as if nothing at all was happening. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, a celestial mechanics expert at the European Space Agency, who had initially been among the most vocal skeptics of all alien theories, found herself confronting mathematics that, within the comforting framework of conventional physics, simply made no sense. If an object is losing mass at the rate we're observing, and that mass is being ejected in non-symmetrical patterns, basic conservation of momentum requires trajectory changes, she stated, her frustration palpable, during an emergency meeting of the International Astronomical Union. The absence of such changes implies either that our understanding of physics is fundamentally flawed, catastrophically incomplete, or that we're observing technology that can actively violate, or at least circumvent, these conservation laws with impunity. The implications were staggering, existentially chilling. To remain utterly unaffected by the immense forces that should have been pushing it violently off course, 3I Atlas would need to possess a mass far, far greater than any reasonable estimate based on its observed size and presumed cometary composition. The calculations were distressingly straightforward, but their conclusion was almost psychologically impossible to accept. The minimum mass required to explain the object's baffling trajectory stability was an unfathomable 33 billion tons. To truly grasp this monstrous figure, it was roughly equivalent to the mass of a small moon, compressed and contained within an object with a maximum diameter of only 5.5 kilometers. The density requirements for such a mass-to-volume ratio approached those found in neutron stars, materials so incredibly compressed that a mere teaspoonful would weigh as much as an entire mountain range. But, as any first-year astrophysics student knew, neutron star material simply could not exist in the relatively benign temperature and pressure conditions of interplanetary space. Dr. James Mitchell, a materials physicist at MIT specializing in extreme matter states, was urgently brought in to evaluate whether any known, or even theoretically conceivable materials could account for such incredible, impossible density. His analysis, completed over a frantic, sleepless 72-hour period, concluded with a stark, terrifying pronouncement: no natural substance could possibly maintain such compression outside the crushing, apocalyptic core of a collapsed star. We're looking at density values that require either exotic matter states that haven't been discovered, or internal structural engineering that exceeds our technological capabilities by orders of magnitude, by eons, Mitchell reported in his hastily prepared but meticulously detailed analysis. The mass-to-volume ratio suggests an internal architecture that approaches the theoretical limits of matter organization, suggesting a fundamental manipulation of reality itself. The 33 billion-ton calculation ignited a crisis that reverberated far beyond the hallowed halls of astronomy. If 3I Atlas truly possessed such unfathomable mass, then its colossal gravitational influence on other objects in the solar system should have been easily detectable by now. Spacecraft trajectories should have been subtly, yet measurably affected. The orbits of asteroids in its vicinity should have shown perturbations, gravitational hiccups. But painstaking analysis of tracking data revealed no such effects, no gravitational fingerprints. This led to an even more disturbing, more revolutionary possibility. Perhaps 3I Atlas was somehow masking or controlling its gravitational signature, demonstrating a technology that could actively manipulate one of the fundamental forces of nature. The implications for physics and engineering were, quite literally, revolutionary, overturning centuries of established understanding. But the implications for human security were terrifyingly immediate. Dr. Sarah Kim, the brilliant Caltech astrophysicist who had become one of the most vocal, persistent advocates for taking 3I Atlas seriously, published a detailed analysis of what controlled gravity technology might mean for an advanced civilization. Her paper, though rushed through publication to meet the desperate urgency of the situation, painted scenarios that kept defense analysts in every major power awake at night, gripped by a cold dread. Gravitational manipulation technology would represent the ultimate expression of engineering capability, Kim wrote, in language that was simultaneously clinically scientific and chillingly ominous. An intelligence capable of controlling gravitational fields could reshape matter at the atomic level, manipulate planetary orbits with a casual flick of a switch, and harness energy sources that dwarf anything in our current understanding by unthinkable margins. The mass revelation triggered immediate, urgent responses from space agencies and military organizations worldwide. If 3i Atlas truly possessed exotic matter engineering, then every single assumption about technological limitations and defense capabilities needed immediate radical revision. NASA quietly activated deep space monitoring protocols that, just weeks earlier, had been dismissed as purely theoretical exercises, as fantastical contingency plans. The agency's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, originally established to track mundane but potentially hazardous asteroids, suddenly found itself grappling with an object that might pose threats that no conventional defense system, no human weapon could possibly address. The European Space Agency, in an unprecedented move, convened an emergency top-secret session of their Space Situational Awareness program, bringing together the brightest minds in gravitational physics, material science, and theoretical engineering. The classified outcomes of that meeting were, predictably, never made public, but a trove of leaked documents, whispering of global panic, suggested that European scientists were frantically developing contingency plans for managing contact with technology that exceeded human capabilities by potentially millennia, by eons. Military strategists worldwide found themselves grimly modelling scenarios that challenged every single assumption about warfare and defence. An object capable of controlling its gravitational signature could potentially manipulate satellite orbits, disrupt all global communication networks, or even subtly, terrifyingly, affect tidal forces on planetary scales, triggering catastrophic environmental shifts. Traditional concepts of deterrence and defense became meaningless, utterly irrelevant, when confronting such godlike capabilities. The public response to the mass revelation was immediate, intense, and profoundly destabilizing. Social media platforms, now the global nervous system, struggled valiantly to manage the furious, swirling discussions about gravity controller technology and exotic matter engineering. Science fiction concepts that had for generations been purely theoretical suddenly seemed terrifyingly real, triggering widespread, frantic speculation about the apocalyptic implications for human civilization. Amateur astronomers and citizen scientists, those tireless sentinels of the cosmos, embarked on their own rigorous verification attempts, using publicly available tracking data to confirm the trajectory analysis that had led to the staggering 33 billion-ton conclusion. Multiple independent calculations conducted by individuals across the globe supported the professional analysis, creating an undeniable scientific consensus that transcended all institutional boundaries. Dr. Lisa Park, the brilliant MIT systems engineer whose earlier work had analysed 3i Atlas's structural developments, published a follow-up study that meticulously examined the engineering requirements for exotic matter containment. Her analysis, a sobering tour de force, suggested that the internal architecture needed to maintain such impossible density would itself represent technology utterly beyond current human understanding. Containing exotic matter requires electromagnetic field control, quantum state manipulation, and structural engineering at scales ranging from subatomic to macroscopic, Park wrote in her comprehensive technical assessment, a document that hinted at humanity's profound inadequacy. The integration of these technologies into a stable, functional system suggests engineering capabilities that approach the theoretical limits of matter organization, pushing the very boundaries of what's physically possible. The implications extended far beyond simple technological superiority. If 3i Atlas represented engineering that approached the absolute limits of physical law, then its creators had achieved something disturbingly close to absolute technological mastery. The yawning gap between human capabilities and such an advancement would be measured not in mere centuries, but in a fundamental existential understanding of reality itself. Religious communities worldwide grappled with theological implications that traditional doctrine, built on terrestrial assumptions, hadn't remotely anticipated. The stark, undeniable demonstration of technology that could manipulate fundamental forces, could bend reality to its will, raised profound questions about the very nature of creation itself. Some religious leaders, in a desperate attempt to reconcile the impossible, interpreted such capabilities as evidence of divine intervention, a manifestation of God's will through alien means. Others struggled, visibly, to reconcile such unlimited technological power with entrenched concepts of divine authority, of humanity's unique place in a divinely ordered cosmos. The Vatican, navigating a theological tightrope, issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging that divine creation encompasses possibilities beyond human comprehension, while emphasizing, perhaps a touch defensively, that spiritual authority transcends technological capability. Other religious organizations, less nimble, found themselves desperately developing entirely new theological frameworks to address the terrifying implications of encountering an intelligence with what could only be described as near godlike technological abilities. Intelligence agencies, their meticulously crafted models of foreign capabilities suddenly rendered obsolete, faced the unprecedented challenge of assessing threats from technology that exceeded every single model they had developed for evaluating adversarial powers. Traditional intelligence gathering methods became woefully irrelevant when dealing with capabilities that might include gravitational manipulation, exotic matter engineering, and potentially other, as yet undiscovered technologies that humans hadn't even begun to theorize. The 33 billion-ton revelation also raised deeply disturbing questions about 3I Atlas's energy requirements. Maintaining such incredible density, controlling its colossal gravitational signature, and operating the complex technological systems that had been observed would demand energy sources far, far beyond anything in human experience. Dr. Robert Chen, an energy systems specialist at Caltech, who'd been modeling the prodigious power requirements for 3I Atlas's observed capabilities, published calculations that were both fascinating in their audacity and utterly terrifying in their conclusions. His analysis suggested that the object might be drawing energy directly from the quantum vacuum, tapping into the fundamental primordial energy that underlies all matter and space itself. The energy density required to maintain the observed capabilities exceeds anything we can generate or even imagine generating, Chen wrote in his technical assessment, his words echoing with a profound sense of human inadequacy. The object appears to be accessing energy sources that we can barely describe theoretically, much less harness practically. The quantum vacuum energy hypothesis added yet another, almost unbearable layer of impossibility to the already intractable 3I Atlas mystery. If the object could, in effect, extract energy from empty space itself, then it possessed technology that could operate indefinitely, without any external fuel sources. Such capability would, from an engineering perspective, render it essentially immortal, an eternal sentinel. The mass analysis had also revealed something else, a subtle but deeply troubling detail that gnawed at researchers meticulously studying the data. The trajectory calculations suggested that 3I Atlas's incredible density wasn't uniform throughout its structure. Instead, the monstrous mass appeared to be concentrated in specific regions that corresponded precisely to the locations where new technological structures had been observed growing. This unsettling pattern suggested that the object was actively, intelligently redistributing its exotic matter to support different functions as needed. The capability implied real-time control over matter states that approach nothing less than the manipulation of reality itself at its most fundamental level. Amateur radio operators, their antennae perpetually scanning the cosmic ether, reported detecting new types of signals following the publication of the mass analysis. The transmissions appeared to be increasing in both frequency and complexity, almost as if the object was actively responding to human recognition of its overwhelming technological sophistication. The signals exhibited characteristics that some analysts interpreted as deliberate testing patterns, systematic probes of different communication protocols and frequency ranges, a cosmic ping to gauge humanity's capabilities. The uncanny timing correlation with the mass revelation suggested chillingly that 3I Atlas was acutely aware of human analytical capabilities and was actively adjusting its behavior accordingly. This raised the deeply disturbing possibility that the object was not only studying human civilization, but was actively monitoring human scientific progress and understanding. The implications for information security and strategic planning were profound, apocalyptic. The 33 billion-ton nightmare had, irrevocably, transformed 3I Atlas from a mysterious visitor into undeniable proof that humanity was confronting an intelligence with technological capabilities that bordered on omnipotence. The object represented engineering that approached the theoretical limits of what physics allowed, operated using energy sources that humans could barely comprehend, and, most terrifyingly, demonstrated an acute awareness of human analytical capabilities. As October progressed, and 3I Atlas continued its inexorable approach toward the inner solar system, each new observation added to a growing, terrifying picture of technological supremacy that made human capabilities seem utterly primitive by comparison. The mass revelation had forced humanity to confront the chilling possibility that they were being evaluated by an intelligence whose capabilities were so advanced that the very distinction between technology and natural law had become meaningless. Chapter 6. Solar Blackout, the October Disappearance. October 29th, 2025. This date dawned with an ominous gravity, marking the beginning of what astronomers would later, with a shudder, call the most frustrating and terrifying period in the entire history of space observation. On this precise day, 3I Atlas was destined to reach its perihelion, its closest, most intimate approach to the Sun. In doing so, it would vanish completely, swallowed by our star's blinding, tumultuous disk for nearly 6 weeks. The timing, for an intelligence that preferred to operate beyond human oversight, could not have been more unnervingly perfect. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute had been dreading this exact moment since the very first trajectory calculations confirmed 3I Atlas's unnerving path through the solar system. "We're about to lose visual contact with the most significant object ever detected in space," she explained, her voice tinged with resignation during what would be the final press briefing before the agonizing blackout period commenced. "For the next month and a half, we will be completely blind to whatever activities 3I Atlas might be conducting behind the Sun. Humanity will be, for all intents and purposes, utterly helpless." The astronomical community was no stranger to solar conjunctions. Planets routinely pass behind the Sun from Earth's perspective, temporarily disappearing from view until they gracefully re-emerge on the other side. Mars, Venus, even Mercury routinely vanish for weeks at a time during these predictable celestial alignments. But 3I Atlas was profoundly, terrifyingly different. The preceding months of observation had revealed an object that was actively changing, demonstrably growing new structures, and displaying technological capabilities that screamed of intelligent design, suggesting it was far more than a passive visitor to our solar system. The precise timing of the solar blackout raised deeply uncomfortable, almost conspiratorial, questions about intentional planning. Avi Loeb's infamous mothership theory had specifically identified the perihelion passage as the optimal moment for conducting covert, undetectable operations. According to his calculations, any probes or secondary craft released during this critical period would be utterly beyond detection from Earth, meticulously masked by the overwhelming electromagnetic interference generated by the Sun's tempestuous corona. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech had been working around the clock, fueled by caffeine and existential dread, to model precisely what 3I Atlas might accomplish during its hidden passage. Her incisive analysis painted apocalyptic scenarios that kept space agencies and intelligence organizations awake at night, gripped by cold sweat. "The solar blackout provides perfect operational cover," she wrote in a classified report, later inevitably leaked to investigative journalists, whispering of the profound strategic advantage. Any technological deployment, trajectory modification, or reconnaissance activity conducted during this period would be completely invisible to Earth-based observation, a terrifying cosmic blind spot. The implications were staggering, existentially chilling. If 3I Atlas was indeed an artificial construct with potentially hostile intentions, the next 6 weeks would provide an ideal, unimpeded window for meticulously preparing whatever actions its unknown controllers might be planning. Conversely, if the object represented a peaceful scientific mission, the blackout period might be when it conducted its most intensive, data-rich collection and analysis activities, hidden from prying human eyes. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office found itself in the unprecedented, unenviable position of frantically preparing for threats that no protocol, no policy manual had ever remotely anticipated. Traditional asteroid tracking relied on continuous, unwavering observation to predict future positions and assess collision risks. But 3I Atlas represented something far more complex, far more insidious than a simple impact threat. It was an intelligence system that might emerge from the solar blackout with dramatically altered capabilities, or, far more unsettlingly, fundamentally changed objectives. The space agency quietly activated deep space monitoring networks that had been developed, ironically, for tracking military satellites and orbital debris, now repurposed for an alien threat. Radio telescopes around the world were frantically reconfigured to listen for any signals, any whisper that might leak around the edges of the sun's overwhelming electromagnetic interference. Even the most optimistic estimates suggested that these desperate efforts would detect only the strongest, most blatant transmissions, leaving most of 3I Atlas's potential activities completely, terrifyingly unobservable. The European Space Agency took the extraordinary, highly controversial step of repositioning several of their deep space monitoring satellites in a desperate attempt to maintain some observational capability during the blackout. These maneuvers required burning precious, non-renewable fuel reserves and would significantly, irrevocably shorten the operational lifespans of the affected spacecraft. But the potential intelligence value, the sheer existential necessity, was considered overwhelmingly worth the sacrifice. Russia's space agency, Roscosmos, made similar highly classified preparations, though their efforts remained largely shrouded in secrecy. Leaked communications suggested that Russian scientists were particularly concerned about the chilling possibility that 3I Atlas might emerge from its solar passage with altered trajectory parameters. Such changes, they knew, could only be accomplished through active propulsion, confirming beyond all doubt that the object was under intelligent, deliberate control, no longer a passive wanderer. China's National Space Administration, continuing its unprecedented, almost desperate transparency regarding 3I Atlas observations, shared detailed predictions about precisely when the object should become visible again, assuming it continued on its current, unsettling trajectory. These meticulously calculated timelines provided a critical benchmark that the international community could use to determine whether the object had made any subtle course corrections, any strategic adjustments during its hidden clandestine passage. Amateur astronomers worldwide braced themselves for the most frustrating, agonizing period in their collective experience. For months they had been contributing crucial observations and meticulous analysis to the burgeoning understanding of 3I Atlas. Suddenly they would be reduced to helpless waiting, their telescopes blind, while the most important object in human history conducted unknown activities, beyond their ability to observe, beyond their ability to comprehend. Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona observatory had become a focal point for global citizen science efforts, organized a vast global network to monitor the sun's tempestuous corona for any unusual activity that might, however faintly, indicate 3I Atlas's presence. "We may not be able to see the object directly," he explained, his voice grim but determined, in a video that attracted over 12 million viewers, desperate for any shred of insight. "But we might be able to detect secondary effects if it's actively interacting with the solar environment, if it's drawing energy, if it's building." The network Rodriguez established included thousands of amateur astronomers across 6 continents, all coordinating their observations in a desperate unified attempt to maintain some awareness, some semblance of control, over 3I Atlas's activities. Solar observation required specialized equipment and careful safety protocols, but the unwavering dedication of the amateur community resulted in an unprecedented, almost miraculous monitoring effort. Professional solar physicists, initially dismissive, found themselves suddenly, surprisingly collaborating with amateur observers who had, prior to the 3I Atlas crisis, never once studied the sun. Dr. Lisa Santos at the National Solar Observatory reported with a note of awe that her institution was receiving more data about solar activity than ever before in its entire history. Most of it from these intrepid amateur observers who had redirected their powerful attention from the deep, distant cosmos to our nearest, most terrifying star. The psychological impact of the approaching blackout was measurable, palpable, across human society. Social media platforms saw an explosive surge in discussions about what 3I Atlas might be doing during its hidden period. Anxiety support groups reported dramatic increases in membership as people struggled, visibly, with the profound uncertainty of not knowing what was transpiring in their own solar system, in their cosmic backyard. Religious communities prepared for a period of intense spiritual reflection and fervent prayer. Many leaders interpreted the solar blackout as a profound test of faith, a time when humanity would be forced to trust in divine providence while remaining utterly ignorant of events that might, quite literally, determine the very future of their species. Special prayer services were organised in churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples around the world, all united by a single desperate plea for guidance. The stock markets, the pulse of global commerce, experienced unprecedented volatility as investors frantically attempted to price in scenarios ranging from utopian peaceful contact to species-wide existential catastrophe. Technology companies saw massive, unpredictable spikes in their share prices, based on wild speculation about potential knowledge transfer opportunities from an advanced alien civilization, while traditional industries faced an unsettling existential uncertainty about their relevance in a post-contact world, a world irrevocably altered. Government agencies faced the daunting challenge of maintaining public order during a period when official, verifiable information would be essentially non-existent, replaced by rumour and fear. Contingency plans were frantically activated for managing civil unrest that might erupt from rumours, from rampant speculation, or from unadulterated panic about Three-Eye Atlas's hidden unknown activities. Communication strategies were desperately developed for responding to the inevitable, virulently spreading conspiracy theories that would flourish in the terrifying absence of concrete data. The very timing of the solar blackout created additional complex complications for the academic community. Research projects that had been hastily initiated to study Three-Eye Atlas would be forced into an agonizing hiatus, just as they were beginning to produce meaningful, crucial results. Funding agencies struggled to maintain support for investigations that might become utterly irrelevant depending on what the object accomplished during its invisible period. Dr. Eleanor Vasquez, the lead author of the paper that had first, bravely, documented Three-Eye Atlas's anomalous trajectory, found herself in the strange, almost unbearable position of having successfully predicted humanity's first encounter with alien intelligence, while being simultaneously unable to observe what might be the most crucial, most decisive phase of that contact. "We've spent months documenting that this object demonstrates intelligent behaviour," she explained, her voice weary during her final pre-blackout press interview. "Now we have to wait and see what that intelligence chooses to do when it knows we can't watch, when we are blind." The international space community established unprecedented information-sharing protocols for the blackout period, a testament to the gravity of the situation. Any detection, no matter how minor or ambiguous, would be immediately distributed to all participating organizations. This level of cooperation represented a transparency that would have been utterly impossible during the ideological frost of the Cold War era. But the sheer magnitude of the Three-Eye Atlas crisis had forced traditional competitors to work together, their differences dwarfed by the common threat. Intelligence agencies prepared for what some analysts, with grim faces, called the longest blind spot in surveillance history. Satellite networks that had been designed to monitor mundane terrestrial threats suddenly seemed woefully inadequate when facing the chilling possibility of advanced alien technology operating, unseen, in Earth's immediate cosmic neighbourhood. New protocols were desperately developed for managing strategic planning when fundamental assumptions about technological capabilities might change, irrevocably, overnight. The solar blackout also raised deeply disturbing questions about information warfare and psychological operations. If Three-Eye Atlas represented a hostile intelligence, the invisible period might be deliberately designed to create maximum anxiety and uncertainty among human populations, a silent weapon. The object's creators, presumably, would be acutely aware that 6 weeks of complete uncertainty would stress human institutions and social structures in ways that direct, violent confrontation might not achieve, subtly unravelling the fabric of civilization. Conversely, if Three-Eye Atlas represented peaceful intentions, the blackout might simply be an unfortunate, unavoidable consequence of orbital mechanics, rather than deliberate planning. Solar conjunctions were predictable astronomical events that occurred regardless of any intelligence's preferences. The apparent strategic timing might, in the end, be merely coincidental rather than intentionally orchestrated. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, who had been modelling Three-Eye Atlas's behaviour using game theory and strategic analysis, published a paper examining the various chilling scenarios that the blackout period might represent. His analysis suggested, with unsettling clarity, that the information warfare value of the timing was so significant that it was overwhelmingly unlikely to be accidental. An advanced intelligence planning contact with a younger civilization would instinctively understand the profound psychological impact of periods of uncertainty and invisibility, Kim wrote in his strategic assessment. The solar blackout provides maximum leverage for psychological influence, while simultaneously maintaining perfect operational security for whatever activities are being conducted. The amateur radio community prepared for intensive, round-the-clock monitoring during the blackout period. While visual observation would be impossible, radio signals might still be detectable if 3i Atlas chose to transmit during its passage behind the Sun. Special listening protocols were established to detect even the weakest, most ambiguous signals that might indicate continued hidden activity. Some radio operators reported detecting unusual background patterns in the days leading up to the solar conjunction, subtly suggesting that 3i Atlas might be testing communication systems or even deploying preliminary probes before disappearing from view. The signals were too weak and ambiguous for definitive analysis, but their timing, their precise synchronicity, with Loeb's deployment scenarios, prevented easy dismissal. The final observations of 3i Atlas, just before it disappeared behind the Sun, showed continued structural development and apparent technological enhancement. The object that would eventually emerge from the blackout period might be significantly, terrifyingly different from the one that entered it. Having used the hidden weeks to complete whatever construction or modification projects it had been conducting, amateur astronomers captured the last visible images of 3i Atlas as it approached the Sun's incandescent corona, meticulously documenting an object that had transformed dramatically, profoundly, since its first detection mere months earlier. The growing structures and technological enhancements were clearly visible in high-resolution photography, providing a crucial baseline for comparison when the object, if it ever did, eventually reappeared. The psychological preparation for the blackout period included frantic educational campaigns about the nature of solar conjunctions and the inescapable limitations they imposed on Earth-based observation. Scientific organizations worked tirelessly to manage public expectations and, critically, reduce panic by explaining that the disappearance was temporary and predictable, even if the object's activities during that time remained utterly unknown. A terrifying cosmic blank. But no amount of education, no scientific reassurance, could completely alleviate the gnawing anxiety of knowing that the most important object in human history was about to spend 6 weeks conducting unknown, potentially world-altering activities beyond human observation. The solar blackout represented humanity's first, agonizing experience with forced ignorance about events that might, quite literally, determine the very future of their species. As October 29th approached, and 3i Atlas prepared to disappear behind the Sun, the global community braced for a period of profound uncertainty, unlike anything in recorded history. The next 6 weeks would test humanity's ability to maintain social cohesion and rational decision-making while confronting the ultimate, terrifying unknown. Chapter 7. Trajectory Truth, the often raw 5% coincidence. The mathematics were unforgiving, unyielding, and Dr. James Chen knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that numbers didn't lie, even when they whispered stories that human minds struggled, existentially, to accept. As the lead trajectory analyst for the elite MIT team that had been meticulously tracking 3i Atlas since its discovery, Chen had dedicated countless sleepless hours to verifying calculations that, with terrifying consistency, pointed to a conclusion so impossibly improbable that it challenged the very concept of cosmic coincidence. 3i Atlas wasn't simply a casual, random tourist passing through our solar system. No, it was conducting what could only be described as a precision reconnaissance mission, approaching Venus, Mars, and Jupiter with a navigational accuracy that vastly exceeded anything human space agencies had ever achieved. A celestial ballet performed by an unseen choreographer. The statistical analysis was devastating in its clarity, in its elegant brutality. Chen had meticulously calculated the probability that any randomly arriving interstellar object would approach these 3 vital planetary targets with the unnerving precision so demonstrably exhibited by 3I Atlas. The intricate mathematics involved complex orbital mechanics, the subtle gravitational interactions between celestial bodies, and the vast, almost incomprehensible three-dimensional space through which such an object might haphazardly approach the solar system. We're looking at a combined probability of approximately 0.05%, Chen explained, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, during the classified briefing that had been hastily arranged for senior officials at NASA, the Department of Defense, and the National Science Foundation, an audience gripped by a mixture of scientific curiosity and profound military dread. To put this in perspective, you're more likely to be struck by lightning while simultaneously winning 3 separate major lotteries than to observe such precise planetary approaches occurring by random chance. This isn't luck, it's design. The trajectory analysis revealed a level of planning sophistication that suggested an intimate, almost prescient knowledge of solar system dynamics. 3I Atlas would sweep past Venus at a precise distance of 0.2 astronomical units on October 15th, providing optimal conditions for high-resolution surface mapping and atmospheric analysis. The Mars encounter on October 3rd would bring the object to within 0.1 astronomical units, an unnervingly close pass, perfect for detailed geological surveys while meticulously avoiding gravitational capture. The Jupiter flyby, scheduled for March 16th of the following year, demonstrated perhaps the most breathtakingly sophisticated aspect of the entire trajectory. The approach distance of 0.36 astronomical units would allow comprehensive study of the gas giant's turbulent atmospheric dynamics, its colossal magnetic field interactions, and its intricate moon systems, while simultaneously using Jupiter's massive gravitational field to precisely modify the object's outbound trajectory for optimal solar system exit velocity. An interstellar slingshot. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA's Director of Mission Planning, a seasoned veteran who had overseen trajectory design for dozens of robotic space missions, found herself studying 3I Atlas's path with a mixture of professional admiration and a growing, profound unease. This represents mission planning at a level that fundamentally exceeds our best capabilities, she admitted, her voice low during internal NASA discussions that were later, inevitably, leaked to congressional investigators, revealing the agency's true alarm. The energy efficiency, the scientific return optimization, and the masterful gravitational assist utilization demonstrate a planning sophistication that suggests either incredible, statistically impossible luck, or, far more chillingly, intentional design by an intelligence operating on an entirely different scale. The precision wasn't limited to the major planetary encounters. Detailed analysis revealed that 3I Atlas's trajectory would also provide exquisite observation opportunities for the asteroid belt, the enigmatic Kuiper belt objects, and various smaller, less significant bodies throughout the solar system. The entire path meticulously maximized scientific data collection, while minimizing energy expenditure and, crucially, detection risk. But perhaps most disturbing was the approach vector analysis. Unlike the chaotic random entry points of typical interstellar objects, 3I Atlas had arrived from the precise direction of Sagittarius, aimed directly toward the galactic center. This strategic ingress, deep within the crowding of background stars, would have rendered early detection by human instruments extremely difficult, a deliberate act of cosmic stealth. Dr. Maria Santos, a stellar dynamics expert at the University of California, Berkeley, had meticulously modeled the visibility conditions for objects approaching from different directions. Her analysis revealed, with chilling certainty, that 3I Atlas had chosen the approach path that would minimize its detection window while simultaneously maximizing its observation time once discovered. An object approaching from the Sagittarius direction remains effectively invisible until it reaches the orbit of Jupiter, Santos wrote in her comprehensive visibility analysis. This approach vector provides only a few months of observation time before solar conjunction, creating maximum uncertainty about the object's intentions and capabilities. It's a textbook case of strategic reconnaissance. The timing analysis was equally troubling, raising further questions about deliberate intent. 3I Atlas had been meticulously timed to arrive during a period of minimal solar activity, thereby avoiding the intense damaging radiation and particle bombardment that characterize solar maximum conditions. The approach also precisely coincided with favorable planetary alignments that perfectly optimized the scientific value of each encounter. Chen's team had modeled thousands of possible approach scenarios, rigorously testing different arrival times, vectors, and trajectories to determine which combinations would provide optimal reconnaissance opportunities. Their analysis confirmed, with no room for doubt, that 3i Atlas had followed what amounted to the perfect path for studying human civilization, while minimizing detection and observation time, a masterclass in cosmic espionage. The navigational precision extended to smaller, almost imperceptible details that revealed even more sophisticated planning. The object's rotation period had been carefully selected to optimize solar panel efficiency, if it was indeed utilizing solar power, while its structural orientation meticulously maximized gravitational stability during high acceleration maneuvers. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, who had been analyzing 3i Atlas using game theory and strategic planning models, published a groundbreaking paper that examined the trajectory from the perspective of intelligence-gathering operations. His analysis suggested that the path demonstrated operational security awareness that significantly exceeded most terrestrial military reconnaissance missions. The trajectory shows undeniable characteristics of a carefully planned intelligence operation, Kim wrote in his strategic assessment, a document that undoubtedly sent shivers down the spines of military analysts worldwide. The approach vector, timing, planetary encounter sequence, and solar conjunction timing all serve to maximize information gathering while minimizing target awareness and response time. This is not accidental, it is strategic. The implications for human security were profound, terrifying. If 3i Atlas represented a hostile intelligence, its meticulously chosen trajectory provided optimal conditions for assessing human technological capabilities while cunningly avoiding detection until it was too late for effective defensive responses. The object could complete its reconnaissance mission and vanish beyond human reach before any effective countermeasures could be desperately developed or deployed. Intelligence agencies worldwide had, in a dramatic shift, begun treating the trajectory analysis as an urgent threat assessment rather than a mere scientific curiosity. The precision navigation demonstrated capabilities that exceeded human technology by significant margins, suggesting that 3i Atlas's creators possessed detailed, predictive knowledge of solar system dynamics and, crucially, human space surveillance capabilities. The amateur astronomy community, a decentralized global network, had conducted their own independent verification of the trajectory calculations, using publicly available orbital data to confirm the professional analysis. Multiple independent studies, some conducted by enthusiasts with no formal training, supported the chilling conclusion that 3i Atlas was following an impossibly precise path through the solar system. Amateur astronomers like Marcus Rodriguez found themselves accidentally participating in what amounted to a global intelligence analysis project. Their home observatories transformed into vital data nodes. "We're not just tracking a space object anymore," Rodriguez explained, his voice imbued with a newfound gravitas in one of his increasingly popular video updates. "We're documenting evidence of planning and intelligence that operates on scales we've never encountered before. This changes everything." The trajectory analysis had also revealed something else, a subtle but deeply troubling anomaly that gnawed at researchers studying the object's behavior. The path optimization wasn't just efficient, it was elegant. The gravitational interactions, timing sequences, and energy management demonstrated an almost aesthetic appreciation for orbital mechanics, suggesting an intelligence with a profound, almost artistic understanding of celestial dynamics. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute found herself, unexpectedly, comparing 3i Atlas's trajectory to classical music compositions, noting the harmonic relationships between different orbital elements and the sophisticated way complex gravitational interactions were orchestrated to achieve maximum effect with minimum effort. "There's an artistic quality to this trajectory that goes beyond mere efficiency," Walsh observed, her voice tinged with awe and philosophical wonder during one of her increasingly philosophical presentations about the object. "We're seeing navigation as an art form, demonstrating an intelligence that finds beauty in the mathematics of celestial mechanics. It's almost spiritual." The artistic interpretation raised uncomfortable, profound questions about the very nature of the intelligence behind 3i Atlas. an entity capable of appreciating the aesthetic dimensions of orbital mechanics while simultaneously conducting what appeared to be systematic reconnaissance, represented a level of sophistication that challenged human assumptions about the fundamental relationship between intelligence, technology, and consciousness itself. Religious communities worldwide grappled with the theological implications of an intelligence that demonstrated both technological supremacy and a profound aesthetic sensibility. Some leaders interpreted the elegant trajectory as evidence of divine inspiration, a testament to God's vast and multifaceted creation, while others worried profoundly about the spiritual implications of encountering an intelligence that might exceed human understanding in all dimensions, challenging core doctrines. The trajectory analysis had also provided insights into 3I Atlas's likely origin and mission duration. Backtracking the object's path through galactic space suggested a journey that had lasted potentially millions of years, indicating either an incredible, unimaginable patience or a technology that could maintain operational status across geological timescales, a true immortal among starships. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT had calculated the energy requirements for maintaining an active mission across such immense time periods. Her analysis suggested that 3I Atlas must possess either self-repair capabilities that approached immortality, or energy sources that could operate independently of external inputs for essentially unlimited durations. We're looking at engineering that treats million-year mission timelines as routine planning considerations, Park wrote in her technical assessment, a document that rewrote the possibilities of engineering. This suggests technological maturity that approaches the theoretical limits of what's physically possible, pushing the very boundaries of our understanding of existence. The multi-million-year journey timeline raised deeply disturbing questions about the patience and persistence of 3I Atlas's creators. An intelligence willing to conduct reconnaissance missions across such unfathomable timescales represented strategic thinking that dwarfed human planning horizons, rendering our temporal perspectives almost comically limited. Military strategists worldwide found themselves desperately developing threat models for an intelligence that operated on million-year timelines, while simultaneously demonstrating technology that exceeded human capabilities by orders of magnitude. Traditional concepts of deterrence and defense became utterly meaningless when confronting such vast, incomprehensible differences in technological capability and strategic patience. The trajectory precision had also revealed that 3I Atlas possessed detailed, intimate knowledge of human space surveillance capabilities and their inherent limitations. The object's approach path meticulously exploited known gaps in Earth's detection networks, while timing its arrival to minimize observation opportunities. This suggested, chillingly, that 3I Atlas's creators had conducted preliminary, hidden reconnaissance of human technological capabilities before launching their main mission. The implications for information security and strategic surprise were profound, apocalyptic, indicating that humanity might have been under silent observation for far longer than anyone had ever realized. Amateur radio operators monitoring 3I Atlas reported detecting transmission patterns that seemed to correlate with the object's approach to each planetary target. The signals suggested that the object was actively collecting and transmitting data as it conducted its precision reconnaissance mission, a cosmic data stream. The correlation between trajectory precision and communication activity reinforced the interpretation that 3I Atlas was conducting systematic intelligence gathering rather than casual exploration. The object appeared to be following a predetermined data collection protocol that had been planned in advance with remarkable, almost terrifying, attention to detail. As October progressed and 3I Atlas approached its carefully planned encounters with Venus and Mars, the trajectory analysis continued to provide undeniable evidence of an intelligence that operated according to principles that challenged human understanding of planning, patience, and technological capability. The 0.05% coincidence had become impossible to dismiss as mere chance, forcing humanity to confront the terrifying reality that they were being systematically studied by an intelligence whose capabilities and intentions remained completely, terrifyingly unknown, despite months of intensive, desperate observation and analysis. Chapter 8. Dark Forest Theory, Academic War Erupts. The scientific community had always prided itself on dispassionate, rational discourse and rigorous, evidence-based debate. But the 3I Atlas crisis was testing those foundational principles, in ways that no one, in their wildest nightmares, had ever anticipated. By early October 2025, what had begun as a seemingly innocuous academic disagreement about an unusual astronomical object had, with terrifying rapidity, metastasized into something approaching full-blown intellectual warfare. Careers, funding, and the very fundamental worldviews of countless scientists hung precariously in the balance. Dr. Christopher Hayes, the distinguished chairman of the International Astronomical Union's Commission on Interstellar Objects, found himself caught at the very epicenter of a controversy that was brutally splitting the astronomical community into increasingly hostile, acrimonious factions. On one side stood the staunch traditionalists, researchers who vehemently insisted that 3I Atlas represented natural phenomena that could eventually be explained through conventional physics and chemistry, given enough time and data. On the other side, a growing, increasingly vocal coalition of visionary or perhaps reckless scientists argued, with mounting evidence, that the data pointed unmistakably toward artificial intelligence and, far more unsettlingly, potentially hostile intentions. The debate had been triggered by the publication of several groundbreaking papers exploring what researchers, with grim faces, called the dark forest hypothesis, as applied to 3I Atlas. The chilling concept, famously popularized by the Chinese science fiction author Liu Cixin, suggested that advanced civilizations in the universe might, as a matter of pragmatic self-preservation, maintain absolute silence and impenetrable secrecy to avoid detection by potentially hostile species-ending intelligences. Applied to 3I Atlas, the theory painted a terrifying, almost apocalyptic picture of first contact, not as a utopian opportunity for enlightenment, but as a prelude to existential threat. Dr. Adam Hibbard, a pioneering researcher at the Initiative for Interstellar Studies in London, had co-authored one of the most controversial papers exploring the grim dark forest implications of 3I Atlas's behaviour. Working alongside the astute Adam Crowell and the indefatigable Avi Loeb, Hibbard had analysed the object's trajectory and timing from the chilling perspective of strategic reconnaissance, rather than naive scientific exploration. The dark forest hypothesis suggests that any intelligence capable of interstellar travel would approach unknown civilizations with extreme caution and a fundamental assumption of potential hostility, Hibbard wrote in the paper, that would irrevocably fracture the astronomical community. The behavior patterns we observe in 3I Atlas are chillingly consistent with reconnaissance activities that precede either peaceful contact or, far more ominously, the preemptive elimination of perceived potential threats. The paper starkly outlined scenarios that kept defense analysts in every major power awake at night, gripped by a cold dread. If 3I Atlas represented advanced reconnaissance for a civilization that viewed other intelligences as existential threats, humanity might be facing evaluation for elimination rather than contact. The object's systematic survey of planetary bodies and its undeniable technological capabilities could represent a threat assessment rather than mere scientific curiosity. The academic response was swift and brutal, a coordinated institutional counterattack. Senior astronomers from major entrenched institutions issued joint statements condemning what they fiercely called irresponsible speculation that risked public panic over natural phenomena. The criticism focused not just on the controversial conclusions, but on the researchers' audacious willingness to publish such speculative analysis without what they deemed definitive proof. Dr. Margaret Thompson, NASA's lead scientist for solar system small bodies, became the public face of the institutional opposition to dark forest theories, her voice firm but tinged with exasperation. The suggestion that 3I Atlas represents hostile alien intelligence is not supported by the available evidence, she stated. Her words carried live on major news networks, attempting to quell the growing public alarm. Such speculation fundamentally undermines public confidence in scientific methodology and responsible research. But Thompson's carefully measured, almost dismissive response was profoundly undermined by leaked communications, revealing that NASA had quietly, urgently begun developing contingency protocols for managing potential alien contact scenarios. Internal documents, exposed by a whistleblower, showed that the agency was taking dark forest possibilities seriously enough to begin preliminary planning for defensive responses for military scenarios. The leak triggered a new wave of controversy as researchers, outraged, questioned why institutional leaders were publicly dismissing theories they were privately investigating with alarming seriousness. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose original trajectory analysis had first suggested artificial intelligence, found herself caught between competing pressures, desperately attempting to navigate the treacherous waters of supporting or distancing herself from increasingly dramatic theories about 3I Atlas's sinister intentions. The data suggests intelligence, yes, but intelligence doesn't necessarily imply hostility, Vasquez explained. Her voice weary, during one of her increasingly rare public appearances, her words a plea for nuance. We must distinguish between evidence-based conclusions and purely speculative scenarios, even when both point toward possibilities that profoundly challenge our assumptions about the universe and our place in it. The academic battle lines were drawn not just around the interpretation of evidence, but around fundamental, existential questions about scientific responsibility and the ethics of public communication. Younger researchers, particularly those with less established careers, often with little to lose, tended to support open discussion of all possibilities, including the most frightening hostile scenarios. Senior scientists, many burdened with institutional responsibilities and reputations built over decades, preferred more cautious, conservative approaches that emphasized uncertainty rather than specific, alarming threat assessments. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech found herself representing a precarious middle position that satisfied neither extreme. Her analysis acknowledged that 3I Atlas demonstrated technological capabilities far exceeding human achievements, while arguing that hostile intentions were only one of many possible, equally plausible explanations for the object's enigmatic behavior. We are confronting an intelligence that operates according to principles we simply do not understand, Kim wrote in her valiant attempt to bridge the growing academic divide. Attributing human motivations like hostility or benevolence to such an intelligence may be fundamentally inappropriate, even anthropocentric. We may be dealing with minds that think in ways that render our terrestrial categories of friend and enemy utterly meaningless. Kim's philosophical, nuanced approach attracted support from researchers in fields far outside traditional astronomy. Anthropologists, psychologists, and philosophers, suddenly finding their expertise relevant, began contributing to the 3I Atlas debate, bringing interdisciplinary perspectives that challenged entrenched assumptions about intelligence, communication, and motivation that astronomers had for centuries taken for granted. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley, who possessed an extensive background in both astronomy and cognitive science, published a groundbreaking paper that examined the 3I Atlas perspective through the lens of contact linguistics and xenopsychology. Her analysis suggested that human attempts to interpret alien motivations were probably doomed to catastrophic failure, without a much deeper, far more nuanced understanding of how non-human intelligence might operate, how it might even perceive reality. We are trying to understand minds that evolved under completely different cosmic conditions, and may operate according to logical frameworks that we, with our limited biology, simply cannot access, Santos wrote in her interdisciplinary analysis. The dark forest hypothesis assumes that alien intelligence would think strategically about threats and opportunities in ways similar to human military planning. This assumption may be completely existentially invalid. The interdisciplinary perspective added new, dizzying layers of complexity to the academic debate while, frustratingly, providing little additional clarity about 3I Atlas's actual, terrifying intentions. If human categories of thought were utterly inadequate for understanding alien intelligence, then both hostile and peaceful interpretations might be equally meaningless, equally flawed projections of human anxieties. Religious scholars, their ancient doctrine suddenly challenged, joined the academic discussion, bringing theological perspectives that further complicated desperate attempts to reach consensus about 3I Atlas's profound significance. Some religious thinkers interpreted the object as undeniable evidence of divine intervention, a cosmic sign. Others, more cautiously, viewed it as a profound test of human faith and wisdom in the face of cosmic uncertainty, a crucible for humanity's spirit. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences issued a carefully worded statement, acknowledging that the universe might contain forms of intelligence beyond human understanding, while emphasizing that divine authority transcended any technological capabilities that such intelligence might possess, reaffirming God's ultimate sovereignty. Other religious organizations, less prepared for such radical paradigm shifts, struggled visibly to develop theological frameworks adequate for addressing potential contact with non-terrestrial intelligence. The academic warfare extended far beyond scholarly journals, spilling venomously onto social media platforms where researchers found themselves defending not just their scientific conclusions, but their professional competence and even their personal motivations. Twitter battles erupted between fervent proponents of different theories, with some exchanges becoming so heated, so personal, that university administrators, horrified, felt compelled to issue official statements about appropriate professional conduct. The public, morbidly fascinated, followed these academic battles with intense interest and growing, palpable concern. Social media algorithms designed to amplify engagement often presented scientific disagreement as damning evidence that experts didn't understand the situation any better than ordinary citizens. This radical democratization of the debate further undermined institutional authority, while simultaneously increasing public anxiety about 3I Atlas. Amateur astronomers and citizen scientists found themselves compelled to choose sides in the academic war, with some supporting researchers who advocated caution and others rallying behind scientists who passionately argued for open discussion of all possibilities, including the most terrifying hostile scenarios. Online forums dedicated to 3I Atlas became virtual battlegrounds where rigorous technical analysis mixed indiscriminately with philosophical debate about how humanity should respond to such profound cosmic uncertainty. The dark forest theory gained additional chilling credibility when military analysts began publishing their own, highly sensitive assessments of 3I Atlas as a potential security threat. These analyses, while carefully avoiding definitive conclusions, nonetheless acknowledged that the object's demonstrated capabilities represented potential threats that demanded serious, immediate contingency planning. Colonel Janet Rodriguez, a strategic analyst at the Department of Defense who specialized in emerging technological threats, published a declassified assessment that treated 3I Atlas as an intelligence-gathering platform, regardless of its ultimate intentions. Her analysis focused purely on capabilities rather than motivations, arguing that the distinction was utterly irrelevant for defense planning purposes. Whether 3I Atlas represents peaceful scientific exploration or hostile reconnaissance, its demonstrated technological capabilities exceed our defensive systems by orders of magnitude, Rodriguez wrote in her military assessment. Her words a stark warning. Prudent security planning requires preparing for scenarios in which such capabilities might be used against human interests, regardless of assumed benevolence. The military perspective added new, desperate urgency to the academic debate, while starkly highlighting the practical existential implications of different theoretical frameworks. If 3I Atlas represented a potential threat, then academic disagreement about its fundamental nature was more than a mere scholarly exercise. It was potentially a matter of species survival, of humanity's very existence. Intelligence agencies worldwide began frantically recruiting academic experts to support classified analysis efforts, creating a parallel shadowy research network that operated entirely outside traditional peer review processes, shrouded in secrecy. This compartmentalization of research further fragmented the already strained academic community, while simultaneously reducing the critical information available for public scrutiny, fueling distrust. The recruitment of scientists into classified programs created profound ethical dilemmas for researchers who found themselves possessing information they couldn't share with colleagues or the public. Some scientists, principled to a fault, declined to participate in classified analysis, preferring to maintain their ability to engage in open scientific discourse, upholding the ideals of transparency. Others felt a profound obligation to contribute their expertise to national security efforts, regardless of the impact on their academic freedom, driven by a sense of duty. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford found himself caught between competing obligations when he was approached to participate in a classified assessment of 3I Atlas's strategic implications. His courageous decision to decline the invitation while continuing to publish openly about the object's characteristics made him a target for both institutional pressure and intense public scrutiny. Science functions best when information flows freely, and conclusions can be challenged through open debate, Kim explained, his voice unwavering, during a controversial interview that critically challenged the trend toward classifying 3I Atlas research. The moment we start hiding our analysis behind security classifications, we lose the ability to distinguish between evidence-based conclusions and speculation driven by fear, by propaganda. Kim's position attracted strong support from scientists who worried profoundly about the militarization of 3I Atlas research. But it also drew harsh criticism from researchers who argued that some aspects of the situation were simply too sensitive for public discussion, too dangerous for open discourse. The debate highlighted fundamental, irresolvable tensions between scientific openness and paramount national security concerns that had no easy resolution, no comfortable middle ground. The academic war over 3I Atlas's interpretation reflected deeper, philosophical divisions about how science should engage with phenomena that fundamentally challenged established frameworks. Traditional scientific methodology required extensive verification and meticulous peer review before accepting revolutionary conclusions. But 3I Atlas was evolving too rapidly, too unpredictably, for conventional analysis timelines. Some researchers passionately argued for accelerated publication and review processes that could keep pace with the object's rapidly changing characteristics, while others insisted that maintaining rigorous, unassailable scientific standards was more important than speed, no matter the urgency. The tension between thoroughness and urgency created additional immense stress within the academic community, exacerbating divisions. The dark forest hypothesis had transformed academic discussion of 3I Atlas from mere scientific curiosity into an existential assessment with profound, species-defining implications for the future of human civilization. Whether the object represented a utopian opportunity or an apocalyptic threat remained profoundly unclear, but the intensity of the academic debate reflected the staggering magnitude of what humanity might be facing. As October progressed, and 3I Atlas continued its inexorable approach towards solar conjunction, the academic community remained fractured, profoundly divided between competing interpretations of evidence that everyone, regardless of their stance, agreed was utterly unprecedented in the entire history of astronomy. The war of ideas, the battle for humanity's narrative, would continue to rage, fiercely and unrelentingly, regardless of what the enigmatic object ultimately chose to reveal about its true nature and its unfathomable intentions. Chapter 9. Mars Flyby Intel October 3rd Revelations. October 3rd, 2025 would forever be etched in human history as the first time multiple spacecraft from different nations would simultaneously observe an interstellar visitor conducting what appeared to be systematic, meticulous reconnaissance of another planet. As 3I Atlas approached Mars at its predetermined, unnervingly precise distance of 0.19 astronomical units, an unprecedented international collaboration of robotic observers, the eyes and ears of humanity, prepared to document whatever the mysterious object might reveal about its true capabilities and its inscrutable intentions. Dr. Sarah Chen, Mission Operations Director for the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, found herself coordinating the most complex multi-spacecraft observation campaign ever attempted, a symphony of robotic precision. We have 6 active missions around Mars, 2 surface rovers, and multiple deep space telescopes, all meticulously focusing on a single object for a 12-hour observation window, she explained, her voice taut with the gravity of the moment, during the pre-flyby briefing attended by representatives from NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and the China National Space Administration, former rivals now united by a common, profound mystery. This represents our best, perhaps our only, opportunity to understand 3I Atlas's technological capabilities while it's actively engaged in planetary reconnaissance, while it's actively studying another world. The European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter had been meticulously repositioned specifically to maximize its observation opportunities during the flyby. The spacecraft's high-resolution stereo camera and various spectrometers were configured to capture detailed imagery and compositional data about 3I Atlas's mysterious surface structures. Dr. Angela Martinez, the mission's principal investigator, had worked 18-hour days, driven by an almost desperate urgency, preparing observation sequences that would provide unprecedented close-range data about the object's technological systems. Mars Express will be able to achieve pixel resolutions of approximately 30 meters across 3i Atlas's surface, Martinez explained in the technical briefing shared with observatories worldwide. This will allow us to resolve individual structural components and meticulously monitor their activities during the planetary approach. If the object is conducting active reconnaissance, we should be able to document specific behaviors and technological signatures, clues to its purpose. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, equipped with its sophisticated color and stereo surface imaging system, would attempt to capture three-dimensional imagery of the object's evolving structural configurations. The spacecraft's Nomad spectrometer was prepared to analyze any atmospheric interactions or emissions that might occur as 3i Atlas passed through Mars's tenuous magnetosphere. Searching for any telltale signs of manipulation, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter represented the most capable observation platform available for the flyby event. The spacecraft's high-rise camera, normally used for ultra-high-resolution imaging of the Martian surface, had been meticulously reconfigured to track 3i Atlas during its closest approach. The resulting imagery would provide the clearest, most detailed views ever obtained of the object's technological systems. Dr. James Wilson, HIRI's operations manager at the University of Arizona, had calculated that the camera system would be able to resolve features as small as 3 meters across on 3i Atlas's surface during the closest approach phase. We're going to see individual components of whatever technology this object represents, Wilson stated, his voice hushed with anticipation, during the final preparation briefing. If there are artificial structures, mechanical systems, or surface modifications, HiRISE will document them with unprecedented clarity, leaving no room for doubt. The timing of the Mars flyby had created unprecedented cooperation between space agencies that had historically guarded their data jealously, almost paranoidly. Real-time sharing protocols were established to ensure that all participants would have immediate access to observation results, regardless of which spacecraft collected the data. The sheer magnitude of the 3i Atlas mystery had forced traditional competitors to work together in ways that would have been utterly impossible during earlier, more territorial periods of space exploration. Russia's approach to the flyby observation involved both their active Mars missions and ground-based telescopes strategically positioned to observe the event from Earth. Dr. Dmitry Volkov, director of the Institute for Space Research, had committed all available Russian assets to provide continuous coverage, complementing the orbital observations conducted by Western agencies. This represents the most significant astronomical event in human history, Volkov stated, his voice resonating with a sense of profound gravitas, during a rare public interview conducted just days before the flyby. International cooperation is not just desirable, but essential for understanding what we are observing. No single nation possesses sufficient resources to fully comprehend the implications of 3i Atlas. Our collective future depends on this. China's Tianwen-1 mission, which included both an orbiter and the Zhurong rover on Mars's surface, provided additional observation capabilities that filled critical gaps in the coverage provided by Western missions. The Chinese Space Agency's unprecedented transparency regarding their observation plans and data-sharing commitments reflected the truly extraordinary, existential nature of the situation, a recognition that humanity faced a common, cosmic challenge. Amateur astronomers worldwide prepared for their own observation attempts during the Mars flyby, though the immense distances involved would inevitably limit their ability to resolve details that the spacecraft missions could capture. Nevertheless, the coordinated amateur observation network established by Marcus Rodriguez and his colleagues would provide crucial independent verification of major events, and serve as a vital backup information source if technical problems affected the official missions. The scientific preparation for the flyby had revealed the extent to which 3i Atlas had become the singular focus of humanity's entire space surveillance capability. Deep space tracking networks, normally used for routine spacecraft navigation and asteroid monitoring, had been meticulously reconfigured to support the Mars observation campaign, their purpose fundamentally transformed. Radio telescopes around the world were strategically positioned to detect any signals that 3i Atlas might transmit during its planetary encounter. Dr. Frank Wilson at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory had established listening protocols that would monitor electromagnetic emissions across the entire spectrum accessible to Earth-based receivers. If 3i Atlas communicates during its Mars approach, either with Earth or with some unknown recipient, we will detect and record those transmissions, Wilson explained, his face grim during the technical coordination meeting that brought together observers from 6 countries, a meeting that felt more like a war council. The expectations for the Mars flyby were both profoundly scientific and deeply strategic. If 3i Atlas was indeed conducting systematic reconnaissance of solar system bodies, its behavior during the Mars encounter would provide crucial, invaluable insights into its data collection methods and its overwhelming technological capabilities. Military analysts had prepared sophisticated assessment frameworks that would evaluate the object's scanning patterns and operational procedures from the perspective of intelligence-gathering effectiveness, dissecting its every move like a cosmic spy. The flyby would also rigorously test various theories about 3i Atlas's intentions and origins. If the object represented peaceful scientific exploration, its Mars approach would likely involve comprehensive but non-intrusive observation, similar to human planetary science missions, a respectful curiosity. If it represented something far more ominous, the encounter might reveal aggressive scanning patterns, prioritized data collection, or technological demonstrations that chillingly suggested hostile reconnaissance, a prelude to something darker. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT had developed sophisticated behavioral analysis protocols that would interpret 3i Atlas's actions during the Mars flyby regardless of the specific technologies involved. Her framework focused on operational patterns, resource allocation, and time management as key indicators of underlying objectives and strategic thinking. We can learn about 3i Atlas's priorities and decision-making processes by observing how it allocates time and attention during the Mars encounter, Park explained in her pre-flyby analysis briefing. Even if we cannot understand the specific technologies being employed, we can interpret the strategic choices reflected in its operational behavior, its ultimate purpose. The Mars flyby represented more than mere scientific observation. It had become humanity's first terrifying opportunity to study alien intelligence actively engaged in what appeared to be systematic exploration. The psychological impact of watching 3i Atlas conduct reconnaissance of another world would force human observers to confront their own planet's profound vulnerability to similar, dispassionate scrutiny. Religious communities worldwide had organized prayer services and reflection gatherings, timed to coincide with the Mars flyby, a desperate plea to the heavens. Many leaders interpreted the event as a moment of cosmic significance that required intense spiritual preparation and divine guidance, fearing the implications. The sight of alien technology studying other worlds would inevitably raise profound questions about humanity's place in a universe that clearly contained intelligence far exceeding their own capabilities, challenging anthropocentric beliefs. The media preparation for the flyby had been extensive, almost frantic, with major news networks planning continuous, round-the-clock coverage of the event and its immediate aftermath. Public interest had reached levels normally associated with major political crises or devastating natural disasters, reflecting a widespread visceral recognition that the Mars encounter might provide definitive, terrifying answers about 3i Atlas's true nature and intentions. Social media platforms had prepared enhanced capacity to handle the anticipated traffic surge during the flyby observation period. Preliminary estimates suggested that billions of people worldwide would be following the event through various online channels, making it potentially the most watched scientific event in human history, a moment of global reckoning. The technical challenges of coordinating multiple spacecraft observations across vast interplanetary distances had required months of detailed planning and unprecedented international cooperation. Navigation specialists had calculated precise pointing requirements for each observing platform, while communication engineers had established real-time data-sharing protocols that would allow global coordination of the observation campaign. Emergency backup plans had been developed for managing equipment failures, communication interruptions, or unexpected, potentially hostile changes in 3i Atlas's behavior during the flyby. The paramount importance of the observation opportunity meant that redundant systems and alternative approaches had been prepared for every single aspect of the monitoring campaign. The Mars flyby would also provide the first opportunity to test whether 3i Atlas demonstrated awareness of human observation capabilities. If the object modified its behavior in response to being watched by multiple spacecraft, it would unequivocally confirm suspicions that it possessed sophisticated intelligence and situational awareness that extended far beyond simple autonomous operation. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford had prepared analysis protocols specifically designed to detect signs that 3i Atlas was actively monitoring human activities while conducting its own reconnaissance mission. If this object is as intelligent as its behavior suggests, it will be acutely aware of our spacecraft and may adjust its activities accordingly, Kim explained during the observation planning session, his words ringing with a chilling premonition. Such awareness would provide crucial, invaluable insights into its cognitive capabilities and strategic thinking, revealing its true nature. The countdown to the Mars flyby had created a palpable sense of anticipation and profound anxiety that extended far beyond the scientific community, permeating every layer of human society. Government officials worldwide had cleared their schedules to monitor the event and its immediate implications, their faces etched with worry. Military commanders had placed surveillance networks on heightened alert status in case 3i Atlas revealed capabilities that posed immediate existential threats to Earth-based assets. As October 3rd approached, and 3i Atlas prepared for its closest, most intimate encounter with Mars, humanity braced for revelations that might fundamentally alter their understanding of intelligence, technology, and their precarious place in the cosmic order. The next 12 hours would provide the clearest view yet obtained of alien technology in active operation, potentially answering questions that had haunted human imagination for millennia, while undoubtedly raising new, terrifying mysteries that would challenge every assumption about the nature of life and intelligence in the universe. Chapter 10. The Hubble Deception, Anti-Tail Anomalies. The Impossible Phenomenon. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the senior imaging specialist at the Space Telescope Science Institute, had been staring at the Hubble Space Telescope images for 6 grueling hours when she finally accepted the impossible. The images, captured on July 21, 2025, when 3i Atlas was still 277 million miles away, showed something that defied every principle of cometary physics. The dust trail was pointing in the wrong direction. Walsh had analysed thousands of comet images. She understood that traditional cometary tails form when solar radiation pushes dust and gas away from the nucleus, always opposite to the Sun. What we observe in 3i Atlas is an anti-tail structure that appears to be actively directed toward the Sun rather than away from it, Walsh explained during the emergency briefing. This configuration is aerodynamically and gravitationally impossible under natural conditions. It defies everything we know. The Hubble images revealed a peculiar teardrop-shaped cocoon of dust emanating from the nucleus, but the broader end was inexplicably pointing toward the Sun. This bizarre orientation unequivocally suggested that material was being actively collected or controlled, not merely ejected by natural sublimation. The implications were shattering. If 3i Atlas was controlling its dust emissions to create specific, unnatural configurations, it represented technology that could manipulate fundamental forces on scales human engineering had never achieved. The precision required to maintain an anti-tail structure against the relentless solar radiation pressure demanded real-time force management systems operating at incredible levels of sophistication. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center was tasked with providing any alternative natural explanation. Her analysis, completed after weeks of desperate modelling, concluded with a stark, terrifying pronouncement. We have exhaustively examined every possible natural mechanism. Solar-wind interactions, electromagnetic field effects, gravitational anomalies, and exotic sublimation processes all failed to provide adequate, convincing explanations. The phenomenon is, by all conventional metrics, impossible. Democratization of discovery. The anti-tail discovery was initially classified as sensitive information, while authorities attempted to develop a controlled public communication strategy. But the classification decision catastrophically backfired. Amateur astronomers, using smaller commercially available telescopes, began reporting similar observations, making the phenomenon impossible to suppress. Carlos Mendez, a Chilean amateur astronomer, captured stunning images of the anti-tail structure using equipment that cost less than a luxury automobile. His photographs, posted online before authorities could react, went viral, attracting over 20 million views in the first week. I know what natural tail structures look like. This is not natural behavior, Mendez explained in his commentary. We're watching something actively manage its material emissions to create configurations that physics says should be impossible. The amateur confirmation of Hubble's observations created a public relations disaster for space agencies, demonstrating that official attempts to classify unusual findings were increasingly futile in the age of democratized astronomical observation. Engineering and energy implications. The anti-tail phenomenon became the focus of intense, frenzied analysis worldwide. Computer simulations reveal that sustaining such a structure would require continuous energy expenditure and real-time force management at levels that unequivocally suggested sophisticated technological systems. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford published an analysis of the energy requirements for artificial tail control, painting a chilling picture. His calculation suggested that 3I Atlas was expending energy equivalent to small nuclear reactors simply to maintain its impossible dust configuration against relentless natural forces. The anti-tail structure represents active engineering of the local space environment, Kim wrote. It's a fundamental defiance of nature. The energy management implications were profoundly troubling. If the object could casually expend such energy simply for what might be an aesthetic or functional dust configuration, its full technological resources for a strategic objective were unfathomable. This capability challenged human scientific and theological assumptions. Religious communities grappled with an intelligence that appeared to find artistic expression in cosmic dust manipulation, forcing a profound reconsideration of human exceptionalism. Communication and concealment. The initial classification of Hubble's findings revealed a disturbing priority. Authorities were more concerned about public reaction than scientific accuracy. Leaked communications between NASA administrators revealed heated internal debates about the risk of triggering widespread social instability. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead author of the original research, found herself caught in a profound ethical dilemma. Scientists have an obligation to share their findings, but we also have responsibilities to consider the implications of information that might cause widespread alarm, Vasquez stated. The anti-tail phenomenon represents technology so advanced that public understanding of its implications may be fundamentally impossible to process. Further spectroscopic analysis revealed that different regions of the anti-tail structure contained different materials, implying systematic organization rather than random emission. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley published an analysis suggesting that the structure might represent a form of communication or information storage. Her research indicated that the dust patterns contained complex mathematical relationships and geometric structures that appeared to encode vast, complex information, a cosmic message in a bottle. The information encoding interpretation, combined with amateur radio reports of electromagnetic emissions that correlated with changes in the anti-tail, suggested that 3I Atlas was using multiple communication methods simultaneously. The phenomenon also provided critical insights into 3I Atlas's awareness of human observation capabilities. The structure became more complex and visually striking as human telescopes achieved better resolution, subtly suggesting that the object was adjusting its displays in response to improved observation technology. This disturbing responsiveness raised profound questions about how long 3I Atlas might have been silently studying terrestrial technology. Military and philosophical implications. Intelligence agencies worldwide found themselves analyzing artistic expression as potential intelligence data. The Defense Intelligence Agency quietly established a task force dedicated to interpreting the anti-tail phenomenon from the perspective of information warfare and psychological operations. Their classified analysis suggested that 3I Atlas might be using aesthetic manipulation to demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority while simultaneously testing human analytical capabilities, a cosmic mind game. Colonel Sarah Martinez, who headed the military assessment team, wrote, "The anti-tail structure demonstrates precise control over matter and energy at scales that exceed our defensive capabilities by orders of magnitude. It is a profound, undeniable threat." Dr. Lisa Park at MIT attempted to reverse engineer the impossible technologies required for anti-tail maintenance. Her analysis painted a chilling picture of capabilities that approached manipulation of fundamental physical constants. The computational requirements alone suggest information processing capabilities that exceed human technology by factors we cannot accurately calculate, Park wrote. Amateur astronomers, through collaborative networks, published time-lapse photography showing the anti-tail structure constantly adjusting itself, maintaining precise geometric relationships despite the chaotic forces of the solar environment. "We're watching active engineering of space itself," explained Marcus Rodriguez, whose observatory became a coordination center. "Philosophical communities grappled with the implications of an intelligence that used cosmic dust as an artistic medium." Dr. Amanda Foster, a philosopher of science at Oxford, published a paper on xenoaesthetics. Her analysis suggested that human attempts to interpret alien art might be fundamentally doomed to failure without a much better understanding of how non-human minds experience beauty and meaning. "We are confronting artistic expression that operates according to aesthetic principles we cannot access." The Hubble deception had transformed from a technical anomaly into a comprehensive challenge to human understanding of intelligence, technology, aesthetics, and reality itself. The anti-tail structure represented undeniable evidence that 3i Atlas operated according to principles that transcended every framework human civilization had developed. As October progressed and 3i Atlas continued approaching its solar conjunction, the anti-tail structure continued to evolve, suggesting meticulous preparation for activities that would occur during the hidden period behind the Sun. The object appeared to be using its final weeks of visibility to communicate something profound through cosmic artistry, while simultaneously demonstrating technological capabilities that rendered human achievements primitive by comparison. Chapter 11. December deadline, the final countdown. November 21st, 2025 arrived with an intensity that seemed to vibrate through the collective consciousness of human civilization, a palpable hum of anticipation and dread. According to Avi Loeb's chilling calculations, this date marked the precise beginning of the window when any probes deployed by 3i Atlas during its hidden, clandestine solar passage might begin arriving at Earth. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was marking a calendar date that could represent either the most wondrous, transformative moment in their species' existence, or the most terrifying, apocalyptic. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech had been losing sleep for weeks as the deadline approached, her mind racing. Not because she believed, with certainty, in the inevitability of alien contact, but because the cold mathematical precision of Loeb's scenario made dismissing it utterly impossible. "The orbital mechanics are unforgiving, relentless," she explained, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep, during what had become daily, urgent briefings for government officials who were frantically struggling to prepare for scenarios that no policy manual, no contingency plan, had ever remotely anticipated. If 3i Atlas did deploy reconnaissance probes during its solar passage, the immutable laws of physics dictate that they would begin arriving in Earth's vicinity during the next 2 weeks. This is not speculation. It is mathematical certainty. The psychological impact of having a specific, undeniable deadline for potential first contact had transformed human society in ways that social scientists were struggling, fruitlessly, to document. Stock markets experienced unprecedented volatility as investors frantically attempted to price in scenarios ranging from technological revolution, a utopian boom, to species extinction, a catastrophic collapse. Religious communities organized continuous fervent prayer vigils, while secular institutions prepared for possibilities that challenged every single assumption about humanity's unique place in the universe. Amateur astronomers worldwide had organized the most comprehensive, meticulous sky monitoring effort in history, with thousands of observers coordinating their desperate searches for any objects that might represent incoming probes from 3i Atlas. The citizen science network established by Marcus Rodriguez had evolved into a sophisticated global early warning system that often detected astronomical phenomena before professional institutions could even respond, demonstrating the power of collective effort. "We've become humanity's eyes and ears for the most important 2 weeks in our species' history," Rodriguez explained, his voice resonating with a profound sense of responsibility in his video broadcasts that consistently attracted over 20 million viewers, hanging on his every word. "Every amateur telescope on Earth is now part of a detection network that could provide the first warning of incoming alien technology. We are the Sentinels." The December deadline had also triggered the most significant mobilization of space surveillance assets since the height of the Cold War. Military tracking networks, normally used for monitoring satellite threats and orbital debris, were reconfigured to detect small, elusive objects approaching from interplanetary space. The detection challenge was enormous, almost insurmountable, since any probes from 3i Atlas would likely be much smaller, far more advanced and stealthier than anything human tracking systems had been designed to identify. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute found herself coordinating an observation campaign that utilized every major telescope on Earth and in space, a desperate unified effort. "We're conducting the most intensive search for artificial objects ever attempted," she stated during the technical briefing shared with observatories worldwide. "If alien probes are approaching Earth, we will detect them before they reach our immediate vicinity. We must." But the detection efforts were complicated by a profound, terrifying uncertainty about what exactly they should be looking for. Human spacecraft were large, relatively crude objects that created obvious signatures detectable by conventional tracking methods. Alien probes, if they existed, might be small enough to effortlessly avoid detection while possessing technological capabilities that could render human surveillance systems utterly irrelevant, archaic. Intelligence agencies worldwide had activated protocols that had been theoretical exercises just months earlier. The chilling possibility that alien technology might soon be operating, unseen, in Earth's vicinity, moved national security planning into territory that no previous generation of military strategists had needed to consider, a cosmic paradigm shift. The European Space Agency had quietly repositioned several of their monitoring satellites to maximize coverage of potential approach corridors that Loeb's analysis had identified as most likely for incoming probes. Dr. Angela Martinez, who was coordinating the ESA's contribution to the detection effort, found herself managing resources that had been designed for routine space science, but were now serving as humanity's first line of defense against the terrifying unknown. "We are attempting to detect objects that may be smaller than automobiles traveling at interplanetary velocities, using technology that exceeds our understanding by potentially centuries, by millennia," Martinez explained, her voice grim during the classified briefing attended by defense officials from multiple nations. "Our detection capabilities may be fundamentally inadequate for the challenge we are facing. We are outmatched." The technological disparity raised profoundly uncomfortable questions about humanity's ability to respond effectively, even if incoming probes were detected. Traditional concepts of interception, deterrence, or defense became utterly meaningless when confronting technology that could manipulate fundamental forces and operate according to physical principles that human science had not yet discovered, let alone mastered. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford had been analyzing the strategic implications of the December deadline from the perspective of game theory and military planning. His assessment painted scenarios that challenged every single assumption about conflict and cooperation between civilizations with vastly different technological capabilities. "We are potentially facing an intelligence that operates on timescales measured in millions of years, while possessing technology that approaches the theoretical limits of what physics allows," Kim wrote in his strategic analysis that had been classified immediately after completion. Traditional concepts of negotiation, deterrence, and defense may be completely irrelevant when dealing with such vast differences in capability and perspective. We are cosmic ants. The religious community's response to the December deadline had been varied, intense, and deeply personal. Some leaders interpreted the approaching date as a moment of divine revelation that would transform humanity's understanding of creation and purpose. Others worried profoundly about the spiritual implications of encountering intelligence that might challenge fundamental doctrines about human uniqueness and divine authority, shattering cherished beliefs. The Vatican had issued a series of statements preparing the global Catholic community for possibilities that traditional theology had never seriously considered. Pope Francis emphasized that divine love encompassed all creation, regardless of its origin or technological capabilities, while acknowledging that contact with non-terrestrial intelligence would require careful theological reflection and potentially new doctrinal frameworks, a profound spiritual evolution. Other religious organizations had developed their own approaches to the possibility of imminent contact, ranging from excited anticipation of cosmic revelation to deep concern about challenges to established spiritual authority. The diversity of religious responses reflected the fundamental, terrifying uncertainty about what alien contact might truly mean for human understanding of the sacred and divine. Educational institutions found themselves desperately attempting to prepare students for a future that might be fundamentally different from anything in human experience. The December deadline had forced educators to consider how to maintain academic programs and career preparation when the basic assumptions about human technological development might soon become obsolete, irrelevant. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley had developed curricula designed to help students understand the implications of technological contact while maintaining critical thinking skills and psychological resilience. Her programs focused on adaptability and cognitive flexibility rather than specific technical knowledge that might become obsolete overnight. We are preparing students for a future we cannot predict or even imagine, Santos explained during the educational conference organized to address contact preparation. The skills we can provide are psychological and intellectual rather than technical, focusing on how to process unprecedented change rather than specific knowledge that may soon be superseded. Adaptability is survival. The December deadline had also triggered unprecedented cooperation between nations that had historically competed or maintained hostile relationships, a remarkable display of unity in the face of the unknown. The sheer magnitude of potential alien contact had forced traditional adversaries to work together in ways that decades of diplomacy had utterly failed to achieve. China's National Space Administration had shared surveillance data and detection capabilities with Western agencies in ways that would have been impossible during previous periods of international tension. Russian space assets were being coordinated with NATO surveillance systems for the first time since the end of the Cold War. The terrifying possibility of alien contact had created a temporary unity of purpose that transcended terrestrial political divisions, a fleeting cosmic truce. But international cooperation was complicated by a profound, agonizing uncertainty about how to respond if contact actually occurred. No international frameworks existed for managing alien contact, and the desperate urgency of the December deadline had prevented the development of comprehensive protocols for cooperation versus competition in such scenarios. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose original trajectory analysis had first suggested artificial intelligence behind 3I Atlas, found herself at the very center of debates about contact protocols and response strategies. Her scientific analysis had inadvertently triggered a global crisis that was now approaching its potential climax, leaving her with responsibilities she'd never sought or anticipated, a prophet of doom. The scientific community opened a door that we may not be able to close, Vasquez admitted, her voice hollow during one of her rare public appearances. The December deadline forces us to confront possibilities that we identified through research, but are not prepared to manage as a civilization. We are blind and unprepared. Amateur radio operators had reported increased activity in frequency ranges that had previously shown only background noise, subtly suggesting that something might indeed be approaching Earth during the predicted timeframe. The signals were too weak and ambiguous for definitive analysis, but their timing precisely coincided with Loeb's deployment scenarios in ways that prevented easy dismissal. The radio observations were being analysed by teams of specialists who were attempting to distinguish between natural phenomena, human-generated interference, and potentially artificial signals that might indicate approaching alien technology. The challenge was enormous, given the weak nature of the signals and the complete lack of previous experience with alien communication protocols. Social media platforms had experienced unprecedented activity as the December deadline approached, with billions of people worldwide sharing theories, fears, and preparations for what might occur during the contact window. The psychological impact of having a specific timeline for potential species. Defining events had created a form of collective anxiety that mental health professionals were struggling desperately to address. Online communities dedicated to 3I Atlas tracking had grown to include hundreds of millions of participants who were following every development in real time. The democratization of information about the December deadline had created a global conversation about human preparedness and response to cosmic contact that operated entirely outside traditional institutional channels. The December deadline represented more than just a date on the calendar. It had become a focal point for humanity's hopes, fears, and fundamental assumptions about their place in the universe. Whether or not alien probes actually arrived as Loeb had predicted, the experience of collectively anticipating such contact had already profoundly transformed human civilization in ways that would persist, irrevocably, regardless of the ultimate outcome. As November progressed toward December, and the window for potential contact widened. Telescopes around the world maintained their vigilant, desperate watch, while human society held its collective breath for revelations that might change everything, or confirm that humanity remained tragically alone in a vast, silent cosmos. Chapter 12. Verdict: Natural Wonder or Alien Arrival, December the 5th, 2025. This date marked the precise end of Avi Loeb's predicted arrival window for probes that might have been deployed by 3I Atlas during its hidden, clandestine passage behind the sun. As the final, agonizing hours of the contact deadline ticked away, humanity found itself in the unprecedented position of collectively holding its breath, waiting for revelations that might never come, or might arrive in forms too subtle, too alien for immediate recognition. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech had been monitoring detection networks around the clock for 2 excruciating weeks, coordinating frantically with observatories, military tracking stations, and amateur astronomers worldwide in what had become the most intensive search for artificial objects in human history. As the deadline passed, without obvious, dramatic contact, she found herself grappling with questions that went far beyond simple astronomical observation. The absence of dramatic contact doesn't necessarily mean the absence of contact, Kim explained, her voice tinged with a philosophical resignation during the press conference that had been scheduled regardless of what the deadline might reveal. We have been searching for alien technology using human detection methods and human assumptions about how such technology might behave. Our failure to detect obvious artificial objects may reflect the profound limitations of our search capabilities rather than the absence of an alien presence. We simply might not be looking for the right thing or in the right way. The December deadline had forced humanity to confront the terrifying possibility that first contact might not occur according to human expectations or timelines. The sophisticated intelligence behind 3I Atlas might operate according to principles that made human concepts of arrival, contact, and communication completely inadequate for understanding what was actually occurring, a cosmic language barrier. Amateur radio operators had detected subtle, almost imperceptible changes in background electromagnetic patterns during the final days of the contact window, but the signals were too weak, too ambiguous, to provide definitive evidence of artificial origin. The observations suggested that something might indeed be happening in Earth's vicinity, but at levels of subtlety that profoundly exceeded human ability to conclusively identify and analyze. Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona observatory had become a coordination center for citizen science efforts, found himself documenting the most anticlimactic but potentially most significant non-event in human history. We may be witnessing contact that operates according to alien rather than human definitions of communication and interaction, he explained, his voice reflective in his final deadline analysis video. The silence may be more meaningful than any dramatic arrival we might have expected, a profound message in its very absence. The subtle nature of potential contact raised profound questions about human perceptual and cognitive limitations when confronting intelligence that operated according to fundamentally different principles. 3I Atlas had already demonstrated technology that violated human understanding of physical law. Any contact methods it employed might be equally incomprehensible to human observation and analysis, a cosmic Rosetta Stone we lacked. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford had been analysing the psychological and sociological implications of the deadline passage, regardless of whether actual contact had occurred. His research suggested that the experience of collectively anticipating alien arrival had already profoundly transformed human civilization in ways that would persist, irrevocably, regardless of the outcome. The December deadline has served as a mirror, reflecting humanity's assumptions about intelligence, technology, and cosmic contact, Kim wrote in his post-deadline analysis. Whether or not alien probes actually arrived, the process of preparing for such contact has revealed fundamental aspects of human psychology and social organization that we had never been forced to examine, a profound self-reckoning. The deadline passage had triggered intense debate within the scientific community about how to interpret the absence of obvious contact. Some researchers argued that the lack of dramatic arrival unequivocally confirmed that 3I Atlas was a natural object, whose anomalous characteristics could eventually be explained through conventional science, a return to comfortable orthodoxy. Others maintained, with fervent conviction, that the deadline represented only one possible scenario among many, and that contact might occur according to timelines and methods that human analysis had not anticipated, a cosmic game of hide-and-seek. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose original trajectory analysis had initiated the entire 3I Atlas investigation, found herself in the difficult, unenviable position of defending research that had predicted events that had not occurred in their expected dramatic forms. Science advances through hypothesis testing, even when the results challenge our predictions, she stated during the post-deadline scientific review, her voice resolute. The absence of contact, according to one specific scenario, doesn't invalidate the overwhelming evidence that 3I Atlas represents artificial intelligence. Our theories are not disproven. They are merely refined by new data. The international space agencies had maintained their enhanced surveillance capabilities beyond the original deadline, recognizing that alien contact might not conform to human expectations. The detection networks established for the December window would continue operating indefinitely, transformed from a temporary crisis response into permanent monitoring systems for potential alien activity, a new normal. Religious communities worldwide had interpreted the deadline passage in ways that reflected their diverse theological frameworks. Some leaders saw the lack of dramatic contact as confirmation that divine authority remained supreme over any alien intelligence, reaffirming faith. Others argued that contact might be occurring through spiritual, rather than technological channels that human institutions were not equipped to recognize, a divine whisper. The Vatican issued a statement acknowledging that divine plans operate according to timelines that transcend human understanding, while emphasizing that the search for truth through scientific investigation remained a sacred obligation regardless of immediate results, a commitment to ongoing discovery. Other religious organizations developed their own interpretations of events that had simultaneously fulfilled and frustrated human expectations, navigating a complex spiritual landscape. Educational institutions found themselves reassessing curricula that had been developed to prepare students for post-contact scenarios that had not materialized in their expected dramatic forms. The experience had highlighted the paramount importance of intellectual flexibility and adaptive thinking when confronting unprecedented situations that challenged established frameworks for understanding reality. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley had documented how the December deadline experience had profoundly affected student psychology and academic planning. Her research revealed that the terrifying possibility of imminent technological revolution had motivated many students to focus on adaptability and critical thinking rather than specific technical skills that might, terrifyingly, become obsolete overnight. The 3I Atlas crisis has taught us that the most valuable educational preparation for an uncertain future involves cognitive flexibility rather than specific knowledge, Santos explained in her post-deadline analysis. Students who learn to think adaptively about unprecedented challenges will be better prepared for whatever the future actually brings, no matter how alien. The business and financial communities had experienced the deadline passage as a period of unprecedented uncertainty, followed by cautious relief that economic systems would continue operating according to familiar, if fragile, principles. However, the volatility and profound psychological impact of the crisis had revealed deep vulnerabilities in global economic structures that had never been tested by scenarios involving potential technological revolution. Stock markets had experienced wild fluctuations as investors frantically attempted to price in scenarios ranging from technological utopia to economic collapse, ultimately settling into patterns that reflected continued gnawing uncertainty about 3I Atlas's true nature and implications. The experience had starkly highlighted how unprepared human economic systems were for managing rapid, unforeseen technological change that might result from alien contact. Amateur astronomers had maintained their enhanced observation efforts beyond the official deadline, recognizing that their citizen science networks had become an essential component of humanity's ability to monitor cosmic developments. The radical democratization of 3I Atlas research had created capabilities that would persist, irrevocably, regardless of immediate contact outcomes. The amateur community had also begun developing new methodologies for detecting subtle phenomena that might represent alien activity operating below the threshold of conventional detection systems, a testament to their unwavering dedication. These efforts recognise that advanced alien technology might be deliberately designed to avoid obvious detection while still conducting reconnaissance or other activities in Earth's vicinity, a masterful game of stealth. Intelligence agencies worldwide had used the December deadline as a rigorous test of their capabilities for managing unprecedented technological threats and information warfare scenarios. The experience had revealed both strengths and profound weaknesses in systems designed for terrestrial rather than cosmic security challenges. The 3I Atlas crisis had forced intelligence organizations to develop entirely new frameworks for analyzing threats that operated according to principles beyond human technological understanding. These advanced analytical capabilities would remain relevant, indeed crucial, regardless of whether the immediate contact predictions proved accurate. Mental health professionals had documented significant psychological impacts from the deadline experience, ranging from acute anxiety during the waiting period to various forms of relief, disappointment, or continued uncertainty after the deadline passed without obvious contact. The experience had provided unprecedented insights into how human psychology responds to existential uncertainty on cosmic scales. Support networks that had been established to help people cope with contact anxiety had evolved into communities focused on processing the broader implications of living in a universe that clearly contained intelligence far exceeding human capabilities. The psychological adaptation to cosmic uncertainty had become an ongoing, profound process rather than a crisis to be simply resolved. The deadline passage had also triggered renewed analysis of 3I Atlas itself, which was expected to emerge from behind the Sun in early December and become visible to Earth-based telescopes once again. The object's reappearance would provide the first opportunity since October to meticulously assess whether it had been modified during its hidden passage or had deployed any secondary objects. Preliminary observations of 3I Atlas as it began to emerge from solar conjunction suggested that the object had indeed undergone profound changes during its hidden period. New structural features were clearly visible, and the electromagnetic emissions detected by radio telescopes showed increased complexity and organization compared to pre-conjunction observations, a dramatic transformation. The modifications to 3I Atlas during its hidden passage provided undeniable evidence that the object had been actively conducting operations while unobservable from Earth. Whether these operations included probe deployment, system upgrades, or other, more sinister activities remained profoundly unclear. But the changes unequivocally confirmed that 3I Atlas represented active technology rather than passive natural phenomena. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute found herself coordinating renewed observation campaigns designed to document whatever 3I Atlas might reveal about its activities during the solar passage. We're about to get our first look at what this object accomplished during 6 weeks of complete operational privacy, she explained, her voice filled with a mixture of dread and anticipation during the observation planning briefing. The changes we observe will provide crucial, invaluable insights into its capabilities and objectives, finally revealing its true purpose. The verdict on 3I Atlas remained fundamentally ambiguous, elusive, despite months of intensive investigation and the passage of predicted contact deadlines. The object clearly represented something utterly unprecedented in human experience, demonstrating capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about technology, intelligence, and natural law. Whether it represented the silent harbinger of alien contact, a cosmic messenger, or simply phenomena that human science had not yet learned to understand, a new category of existence remained an open, existential question that would continue shaping human civilization irrevocably, regardless of immediate definitive answers.